The intention of justice is to see that the guilty people are proven guilty and that the innocent are freed. Only we have a problem here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are taking a look at this case from a psychological perspective.
Fun. Everybody was having a good time.
Does Brian Albert strike you as the kind of guy who's always having fun? No. And here's a news flash for this judge. Mental health professionals have solutions.
They made an arrest. They got the guy for Danny.
It was like a mix between sadness and anger, because that's the moment for him when he really started to believe that his mother was involved.
The only corresponding records in the other databases are from previous days.
There is a huge psychological component to what was going on here. And according to this group, Brian Albert Jr. gets like the most celebrated birthday hour of anybody ever. Like every 30 seconds, someone's like, "Happy birthday!" John totally seemed like such a cool guy.
John makes me like the boobies.
Somebody jumps in as a journalist, draws attention to it in a light that is not good for the prosecution. I mean, and there are serious allegations of corruption in the DA's office and the state police.
It's not like his 21st birthday. Hi, loophole lawyer. How are you?
It feels great. It feels good to be back.
I'm going to go with the seahorse because certainly I've gotten a lot of love from everybody today, which feels nice.
You are very, very loved. And I can't believe we get to spend your birthday with you. Happy birthday!
Text messages read back as if he's the aggrieved party.
Hold on. Have each of you been called murderers?
Who wants to be the one to give Matt the bad news?
I wanted to prove or to demonstrate.
I don't know where the dog was. I didn't hear any barking. Her name is Sunny. She was named after Santino Corleone.
Hey, hi, everybody. There's my Johnny. Hello. That's my Johnny.
Sunny barks if you walk by my window and sneeze. You're not really going to deny this, are you?
It's so weird. It's like the Inside Out, upside down. Narnia.
I would get at some point in a timely fashion and then turn it over.
Know if we had it enough, or we had it all, I should say. Kill me. Not having any observable or detectable electrical activity would be a systole.
Means death. 3 separate tab IDs. The thing he had to encourage her to do was not to testify.
You know, and Julia Albert responds to the text message from John, and she goes, "My biggest fear in life is ending up on Turtle Boy."
Stop it.
Oh, you never seen that? Oh, I got it.
You're not going to like this, though. You're going to disagree with me on
Just say it. I like the
disagreement.
conflict.
Okay.
Yeah, the disagreement.
People are terrified of him. They're absolutely terrified of him. And how do we know that? We know that from Mega Motion. Just another day for me, right? Which means it was just not an ordinary day for somebody else. Just when you thought you were out, they pull you back.
Karen Reed plots. She fabricates a conspiracy.
I am just a person who likes to understand. That's going to increase the likelihood that we're going to take some action.
Here she is.
My sister Jillian, yes.
It's funny. But then he's got part of his shirt untucked. His back pocket is kind of hanging out.
He has to buy that. So, he has to buy that. So.
And showing solidarity, you can see them there.
It's about getting justice for John O'Keefe. There clearly is an issue of integrity.
How dare they?
Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Yay. This, of course, is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Benigno. And as you guys are well aware by now, I am a behavioral scientist, a psychotherapist, a counselor, a student, blah, 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 blah. And I'm excited to be here with all of you tonight. It's gonna be an interesting night. I spent a ton of time over, I want to say like the last, probably to be fair, 10 days, really going deep into this Mackenzie Shirilla case to determine what are we looking at, right? What is going on with this kid? I know I saw a lot of people asking questions like, is she a narcissist? Is she a sociopath? Right? All of that kind of stuff. So actually, she is neither. And what she is very interesting. And we're gonna have some fun talking about that. And hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you guys. I see everyone in the chat. I'm always so afraid as the open is playing to participate in the chat, because when I do, it changes something. Like I press a button and by accident and it changes what's on the screen. So I'm like afraid now to be in the chat, which sucks. But that's why you guys don't see me there. I really want to say hi to you all. I'm like, oh my God, hi guys. I can't, because I'm too afraid to screw up the open. And I want to change the open. Like I almost did. I was like, oh, I want to change the open, but I like this open. You know, it's like I can't decide what to take out of it. So I got to work on that. And of course, yes, we saw the first of the civil suit against Karen and Aiden yesterday. That was interesting. We got to see our first glimpse of what I guess Colin and Brian Higgins who we haven't seen in a while. I would say everybody else kind of, certainly I feel like we see Chris Albert all the time. I'm not sure if that's true or if I made that up, but I do feel like we've seen him consistently. He doesn't seem to change very much, Chris Albert. He looks the same. Brian Albert looks older, like he's lost some weight. He just looks older, like he's aged quite a bit in the last couple of years. Jen looks like she might have had Botox or something done. You know, she looks a little better generally than when we first met Jen, probably because she's more in the public spotlight. I'm not surprised to learn that she might have done that. Colin, however, I didn't recognize at all from the angle that we saw, right? I was like, that's Colin. Didn't recognize him. He maybe got thinner and like his hair lightened. I'm not sure what that was about. When I saw him today on video, I recognized him. Maybe it was like without the mannerisms. I'm not sure. And then, of course, we have our boy, Higgy Bear, who tragically doesn't really have that whole bear thing happening anymore, does he? Let me see if I can pull up this picture really quick, just to make sure I'm sure everyone has seen it, but let me see if I can find it for everyone. It should be right here. Here they are. Yeah, here it is. So there they are. This is our lovable group. So okay, you know, Higgins, you know, when you look at him in the face, you can you see that it's him. He definitely did the Ozempic thing. He lost a lot of weight, clearly. He looks older, right? You know, some people, isn't it funny how like some people, they look better almost when they're a little heavier, like their face fills out, and then they lose a lot of weight and it ages them considerably. It happens. I guess it's like a trade-off, right? You get to pick. Do I want to be, you know, overweight and have the full face, or, you know, skinny but my face droops? I guess that's a trade-off. So and yeah, of course, look, I mean, these people certainly at the very least have been through a lot, right? And I saw a lot of comments online about how Matt doesn't seem phased. And, you know, that doesn't surprise me because of all of the people in this whole thing, everybody, if we're taking the sum total of the clan who are involved in this case, Matt seems the least phased, doesn't he? Like the guy never came in the house, right? I'm not really sure what that says about Matt. And I've always thought it. I mean, I've always thought that Matt McCabe seemed to be the least phased. And yet, I say that, and yet remember, he was the one when the feds came in April of 2023, and Jen, didn't give it up, didn't tell them honestly who she had spoken to, who she had called. It was Matt that was like, what do you mean? You got to call them back and tell them the truth immediately, right? So, maybe he's the voice of reason. I'm not really sure. I don't know what to make of Matt in that regard, but he seems to be able to compartmentalize pretty easily. Maybe that's really what it is. Now that I'm thinking about it out loud, maybe that is what it is, right? Like he has the ability to kind of like take something and lock it away somewhere so that it doesn't disrupt his daily life. I think that's probably a good way to categorize it. He does seem like the most unfazed, but again, maybe that's just the way it looks on the outside. I don't know, but interesting. I didn't get to see the whole hearing. It didn't sound to me like, much happened. Obviously, Karen and Aiden weren't there. And when I spoke to Vince about this very briefly, he made it sound like it was a hearing that they wouldn't have had to have been at, that this was really like a lawyer's meeting. And so he was surprised that they all showed up. So I don't know. I don't know if they were supposed to be there and weren't, or if these guys weren't and ended up being there. So very interesting. And then actually to Higgins's right, from our right, there's another very young looking guy who online people were saying that was his attorney. I'm not sure if it is or not. But there was another person sitting right next to Brian Higgins, said to be his personal lawyer, but that person did look considerably younger than I would think his lawyer was. But so that is how the crew is looking these days. Yeah, there they are. There's our killers in court trying to put forth the most absurd civil lawsuit the world has ever seen. And you're in trouble when you have to be just like openly dishonest in your lawsuit. Like, that it can't be good if you are trying to pull flat out deception from the start. Like, you can't even put factual information in the complaint. It has to be twisted and misrepresented and taken out of context. Like, that's all they have. It's very sad. But I guess, you know what? When your life is a complete charade and has been for years, I guess you kind of get used to the charade. And, people have asked me many times, do they believe the bullshit at a certain point? I doubt it. Right? I doubt it. But I guess if you spend a lot of time with Carrie Roberts, then you get to, at least during those moments of your day, pretend, really well. Convince yourself that Karen Reed is the evildoer and you are just a victim. A victim of harassment, right? It's getting hard though. Like, it's getting harder with these people because it's just so obvious, right? I mean, it's so obvious. And now that we have all of the FOIA production material coming out, it's like the lying is so over the top. It's so egregious. It's so constant. Everything that they say. I mean, and a lot of it, and I know a lot of you have emailed me and we've talked about a lot of it already. But, and then of course, obviously, I've been talking about it for a while. They're just so guilty. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. And all I can do is pray that there is a law enforcement agency somewhere in the world paying attention. Now, one thing I will say before we shift to Mackenzie, I have been doing a preliminary analysis of this Greg Connors character, this person who is running for DA of Norfolk County. He's basically like, the inside man. He's already Morrissey's guy. And so he's basically running the office as it stands. And oh no, actually, I'm sorry, that's not true. He was running the office. He has left the office. My bad, I forgot. He left the office, like I think in February, to try to put distance between himself and Morrissey. Up until then, however, through the last year and a half, while Morrissey's basically retired, he was essentially running the office, according to him. Now, I say that because that's what he put forth in his interview with, I think I know her name. I know you guys know her name. It's not coming to me. The girl with the accent from Hell, the woman, a woman with an accent that is so horrible and just so tough to hear that I have been literally going through this analysis, trying to figure out how to cut as much of her out. I even thought about trying to use AI to do like a voice over because I can't take it. It's really, and I'm not saying that to be mean, right? I'm really not. It's like, it's so bad. And instead of trying to correct it, she leans into it and it makes it like 1,000 times worse. You guys know who I mean. What's her name? Anyway, so we'll come to it. But she did an interview with Greg Connors, and I saw that he's actually doing an interview right now on X with someone else. So he's making the rounds, and he's just so full of shit. And one of the things that he is so full of shit about is the federal investigation being canceled, quote unquote. So though I have not finished that analysis, or even come close to finishing it, to be fair, it is clear from my analysis that Greg Connors is being dishonest when he talks about being the one to announce the cancellation. That's his language, not mine. The cancellation of the federal inquiry into the Karen Reed matter, according to him. So, very interesting that came out as just total horse shit. I don't know what it means, except that when those words came out of his mouth, it wasn't true. So maybe there's some universe where there's a federal agency of some kind paying attention. I hope so. Because this is just, it's so tough to take. It's physically, like, it hurts so bad, right? When I stop and I think about these people and I look at their faces, and all I can think is like, oh, this is, like, you guys are really bad freaking human beings. Like, just terrible people. The worst of the worst. Oh my God. I also did, and this is a side note, but I also did an analysis of Scanlon. So I found, I think it was LTL Media put it out, the conversation between Turtle Boy and Steve Scanlon from a long time ago. I mean, this is like way back, like 2023, way back. And I did a preliminary analysis on that phone call, which was also fascinating because he's being deceptive the whole way through, like the entire conversation. So again, I don't know. I didn't do the full analysis, and I don't know what the deception is, but I can tell you that he is definitely being deceptive, without a doubt. So there's that. Oh my God, it's so funny. So, and politicians, I mean, like they're kind of always bullshitting. So I half expect that I have to be careful because of course he's not telling us the truth, but some of it is much more egregious than others with the Greg Connor stuff. So that will be out for you all to see hopefully soon. But today we shift gears to discuss this Mackenzie Shirilla case that has the world captivated. And as I think everyone here probably knows full well, Mackenzie, this is the Netflix, The Crash, the case where this 17-year-old girl was drove her car into a brick wall at 100 miles per hour, which killed her boyfriend and his friend Davion. So Dominic and Davion. Of course, she did at the last minute turn the steering wheel so that the right side of the car was demolished and she was spared. And that does appear to be what had happened. Of course she did. And so as a result of this accident, Mackenzie is facing 15 years to life in prison. But man, it's like that is just the beginning of this story. That is like so the beginning of the story, because now her parents have just filed they just filed a notice of an appeal. So the appeal itself, I do not think is officially filed, but a notice of an appeal was sent to the victims. So Christine Russo, Dominic's sister, got this notice, meaning, oh, here we go. Another, got to drag yourself back into the courtroom probably to sit there and, stare at their fat heads again, right? So they are appealing, however, and this is what we're going to talk about in just a minute, on the grounds that there are these text messages that, quote, prove that really the true culprit, the person who really is responsible for the death of Dom, of course, and Davion, isn't Mackenzie, the person who was driving the car, whose slipper was permanently the car like crushed around, right? When she had her foot all the way on the gas pedal so that the car got up to 100 miles per hour. And then the car like formed this kind of like cup around the slipper to keep it in place. No, it's not that person. Wasn't her. The real culprit was Dom, was her boyfriend. Of course. Hello. Duh. So we're going to have to endure a little bit of hearing that. So I think ultimately what this Netflix documentary was about, I think that this family agreed to do the documentary hoping that they could shift public narrative, right? So they're trying to time it all out so that they can kind of garner public support for Mackenzie and then drop this appeal. And then we're all going to be so horrified by these text messages that prove that Dominic is really the person responsible. There's only one problem with this master plan that the Shirilla team is duct taping together. And that is that their daughter has a very long, storied, really, history of mental illness that they have gone to extraordinary lengths to try to obfuscate, deny the existence of outright. And not only that, but feed, right? Like these, especially Natalie. Like Natalie Shirilla is really one of the world's greatest codependents, enabling at such an extremely successful level that her daughter really believed, it appears, as though she could drive her car at 100 miles per hour into a brick wall and nothing would happen. Because that is how successful Natalie Shirilla has been at shielding her daughter from believing that her words and actions have any consequences whatsoever. So these two are so completely delusional, and all they do is feed each other's delusion like around the clock, right? Because the only person that Mackenzie now speaks to at all is her mother multiple times a day. And that's been true since probably she was arrested, right? It is truly extraordinary. So I have listened to hours of these two just talking about nothing and talking about a lot of other things. And it is just breathtaking. It's breathtaking. The level of mental illness is extraordinary in this case. It really is. It really is. So I'm going to play this first, and then we're going to go backwards to discuss Mackenzie's mental illness. And then, of course, I want to know what you guys think too, because this case is insane. I mean, this is insane. It's insane. And I would love to know, I understand that as a parent, you want, obviously, your daughter to not be in prison. I mean, of course, none of us want our children to be in prison. But here's the part about this case that, in all seriousness, it's really not funny. It's absolutely disgusting. Because when you understand, as I have now learned, the facts, the actual facts, when you understand who Mackenzie Shirilla was, this accident was not only likely, it was predictable. It was actually predictable. So it was so predictable that even Mackenzie's mom knew it was coming, right? This is the thing that Natalie Shirilla has spent her daughter's entire young adolescent life fearing was going to happen and working overtime to try to avoid. This is why she bought her daughter alcohol, bottles of alcohol, gave her daughter money to go get drugs. This is why this family just did anything that Mackenzie wanted them to do at any time, day or night, because this woman was so afraid that her daughter was going to try to take her own life. That is what this case comes down to. Natalie Shirilla was so terrified that her daughter was going to do something reckless because she always did. She always did. And the denial. So Natalie Shirilla has two buzzwords, two ways that she likes to rationalize and deny the reality of her daughter's mental illness. One is she uses the word anxiety. And every time she says it, she makes sure to let us know that this is a very common phenomenon in the world that we live in today, right? So thank you for pointing that out to us, Natalie. So that's one, anxiety. And this is, when asked about, well, did she have any mental health struggles? Mom likes to say, well, just, anxiety like everybody else, right? Yeah. Okay, dear. So there's that. And then the other word Mom loves is safety. It's her job to keep Mackenzie safe as her mother. I'm going to keep you safe. Okay. Well, what safety really means is I'm going to do everything I can to, number one, make sure that my daughter does not get upset any way that I can, because I don't want her to threaten to kill herself and then do it. Right? That is what this all comes down to, is Mackenzie used suicide as a way to manipulate her parents, probably from the time she's in the 8th grade to the 10th grade, so frequently and so successfully that her parents not only did anything she wanted anytime, but they did it preemptively. Like they were so worried that her emotions right, she'd get activated, that they would try to do it preemptively. Could you imagine? And as a mental health professional who's worked with this diagnosis for 25 years, everything, which we're going to talk about, everything you're supposed to do to try to help somebody like this is exactly the opposite of what her mother and father have done. Exactly the opposite. So these two, that is who I now blame for what is going on here. I blame the Shirilla parents because they refuse. I mean, wait till you hear this shit. It's freaking mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. They refuse to let Mackenzie for 1 second consider that she might have something to do with the situation that she is in. Ever, by the way, not just in prison, but ever. Whether it's, a teacher snaps at Mackenzie, a fight at school, because let's be honest, Mackenzie's been getting in fist fights at school with other kids from the time she's in, I'm going to guess, the 6th grade, because I don't remember on the actual documents, the school paperwork, what year it said. But young, okay, starting in middle school for sure, she would get into fights with other kids, other girls. Would walk around up until her arrest with a, quote, bitch list, a list of people, mostly women, that she hates and is out to get. That's Mackenzie. Her tantrums became so extreme and so predictable that she would hold anybody and everybody hostage wherever she was, whatever they were doing. And this is this is the kicker. This is the thing that really is the most maybe upsetting about this. Everybody who knew Mackenzie knew it. Everybody who knew Mackenzie knew it. They all knew it. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Okay, so let's watch this. I really want to hear your reactions to this. So this, remember what I mentioned, the Shirillas have this master plan to try to garner public support. And this, now we're going to see from TMZ, this is part of their master plan. So here we go. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you can see it. All right, here we go.
Mackenzie Shirilla has really captivated people, and everyone seems to have an opinion about her case after watching the Netflix documentary, The Crash. Mackenzie is the young woman who is serving a life sentence right now for the murder of her boyfriend and one of their friends because she was driving in a car with them early one morning and went speeding down a road 100 miles an hour and crashed into a building. They died. She survived. But now, as we've seen a lot of the details play out in this trial, people are wondering, and we had Mackenzie's father on the show last week, whether or not she really should be serving a life sentence. That, if anything, this may be manslaughter and not a murder case. So, which would clearly affect her sentence, which is what her parents would like to happen. They've tried on a couple of appeals and it has failed. But we got some text messages now. These are text messages that we got from the prosecutor's office that paint a slightly different picture about the relationship between Mackenzie and her boyfriend, Dominic. Obviously, the prosecutor said that Mackenzie got behind the wheel that night and intended to kill Dominic, and their friend happened to be in the car as well. So these text messages paint a different picture, that Dominic, apparently, according to Mackenzie, was attempting to kill her at one point. She said she showed up at his house and she's sitting outside and texts him, wants him to come out of the house. He says, fine, I'll come out, give me a sec. And then she tells him, you're going to go in the back seat of my car. because you're not allowed in the front. Okay, well, don't have it started. I don't want you to try to pull off. Now that is interesting because it shows, I think, that he did not want to, something had happened where he didn't want to be in the car with her.
With her driving.
Something before. So I would see how that would help the prosecutor's case. But then it continues and she answers to him, do you think I would have my car started with you in it, knowing that you just tried to kill me? I'm very okay, and you trying to kill me again. You better come inside my car, ready to give 3 reasons why I should be in this relationship with you, and 3 reasons why you love me.
Right.
What is happening here? I mean, obviously, it's very clear from the documentary and from these text messages alone, it's a volatile relationship. This is about 2 weeks before the crash.
Correct.
We've heard that he was talking about breaking up with her. So whatever it is they're arguing about, why this text where she's saying, you tried to kill me, how did that not become a bigger thing in the trial?
So I think this is kind of stemming from, as you see in the documentary too, they talk about this incident where Mackenzie was driving erratically, according to Dominic and Dominic's family, because Dominic was in the passenger seat, called his mom, said, Mackenzie is driving erratically, she's speeding up, I'm trying to get her to slow down. Dominic's mom responds, says, okay, but we're going to send, I think they said their uncle.
So that's why he's saying, I don't want to get in the car with
He's scared to get in the car with her, but she's scared for him to go in the passenger seat because of something that happened in that car weeks before the actual crash.
See, and that's where I think, like, why Mackenzie's lawyer didn't nail that down more. Like, what was, flesh that out. If there really was an incident where Dominic tried to kill her, if there really was, where is that evidence being presented in court?
Right, and I think that's something prosecutors, I mean, there's 30,000 pages of text messages between these two. I mean, they dated for 4 years. But I think that's something prosecutors at the end of the day realized she was the one behind the wheel. This was premeditated. They said that incident between, Dominic and Mackenzie in the car weeks beforehand, that is part of this premeditated and planned out
Meaning
crash.
that because for several weeks they were going back and forth at each other, arguing about breaking up,
Right.
that
showing up to his house.
She snapped that night and decided that she. I got to say, when you watch the documentary, at the beginning of it, it seems very clear cut. Oh, she did this. But as you watch it, I don't know. I don't know that it's as clear cut as it seemed at the beginning.
For sure. And her.
Okay, so what do you guys think? Let's hear from you before we get into sort of the clinical aspects of what's going on here. So for me, just so it's clear, from a mental health perspective, this case is very clear. There's really not a lot of gray area what's going on. But I would love to know what you guys see, because this, I mean, it's just insane. And what do you think about these texts? What do you think they are? How do you make sense of these text messages from, I guess, the parents who are trying, Mackenzie's parents, who are trying to, quote, prove that really somehow it was Dominic who was responsible for this, because there was obviously evidence that he tried to kill her before. So I wonder, what are your guys? Yes. Okay. Oh, I didn't mean to grab that. We'll have to go back for that one. Hi, Emer 42. Yes. So manipulative texting. Absolutely. Of course. Right. Absolutely. So that's exactly right. Dorothy Nabe 6238. It absolutely was manipulative. So one of the things that, you could call it a form of gaslighting. Not as sure about that. 3292. Absolutely. We're going to take a listen in just a bit to how some of Mackenzie's good friends felt about her driving. Because everyone, again, this is everyone who knew Mackenzie knew a number of things about her. For example, they knew that she struggled to keep relationships, that she would cycle through various friends and friend groups, right? They knew that she was the world's most horrific driver. I mean, she would, in fact, one episode, I don't know if we're going to see it. I might have it. I might not. In one episode, Mackenzie got into a road rage incident where she threw something at another vehicle. And then that man, and this is important because it speaks to these texts, that man then followed her. And when she realized he was following her, she starts recording him and making phone calls saying, I don't know who this guy is. He's following me. He's a creep, right? So by the time she pulls into a parking lot, she calls the police and neglects to mention to the police that, oh, she threw something at the car, and that's the reason why he was following her. That's how Mackenzie Shirilla operates. So this this incident before the crash, where they were driving and Mackenzie's threatening to kill them both in the car, driving like a psychopath. Of course, Mackenzie understood how that would look after the fact because Dom had to call his mother. And remember, Dominic lived next door to his mother. So Dom lived on the property next to mom. And Mackenzie was very, very aware, didn't want to fight outside, didn't like to openly display in front of Dom's family her manipulation, right? So she would like secretly kind of like nag at him, even with the family right there, in a way that was kind of behind their back. So they didn't know how bad it really was. They knew she was crazy, but they didn't know how bad it really was. And it's really sad because it seems like he, like Dom, was an empathic person, somebody who felt things deeply. And because of that, she was able to get her hooks in him and he couldn't get out. So you could call it gaslighting for sure. Right. Of course. Yes. At Judy F6220. Of course, he wasn't trying to kill her. Mackenzie didn't care if she died in the crash. Also, she thought she'd be all famous from going out in a blaze of glory. So here's one of the things that we're going to take a look at. You're absolutely right. Obviously, Mackenzie, was in the car. And when you drive a car at 100 miles per hour into a wall, the obvious assumption is that you're going to die too. This is where her mental illness, though, begins to really shine through, begins to speak to what is going on here, in my opinion. And it's just shocking because if the family had been honest from the start, and this, by the way, is not going out on a limb. I see some of you already in the chat, guessing what I'm about to say, right? I mean, this isn't hard. It's really, really not. It's very clear. I cannot imagine that her parents had never heard it before because her behavior is so clear cut. This is like the most textbook case in the world. But this is what the Shirillas do. They deny reality. They live in a deluded bubble where Mackenzie is just a little anxious and, she likes to run her mouth. That's it. Just all talk though. Just all talk. And it's a coincidence, Natalie, that your daughter killed 2 people. It's just totally a coincidence. Right? Oh, we have a couple of new members. Yay. At Virtual Jurors, a member for 6 months. Love your Wednesday lives. Happy 6-month anniversary. And we have a new member at Barking Mad 3. Welcome, Barking Mad 3. Very exciting. At Love Boston sends a $9.99. Mackenzie used substance. She sure did. Displayed erratic behavior and did not have appropriate parental guidance. Boy, is that true. I believe her sentence was appropriate and she is guilty. IMO. What is IMO? I must be something really obvious that I'm missing. Without a shadow of a doubt, correct. Yes, without a doubt. And we're going to get into this for sure. Because, I don't think that. So I had seen, I saw the Mean Girls, like 35-minute documentary on Mackenzie's story. I think there was one on ID that aired. I'm not sure, which show that was proper. I've seen things on YouTube, people covering her case, podcasts, whatever. And then, of course, the crash, right? The most recent Netflix documentary on this case. And I don't think any of them adequately capture the severity of Mackenzie's mental illness. I don't think they do. I really don't. I think that all of these programs have sufficiently downplayed how seriously unwell Mackenzie is. And really, it does not take much more than, I guess it's a beyond the surface level investigation to see it, but not much more than in a surface level investigation. This is a severely disturbed person who her pattern of dysregulation, of emotional dysregulation, of extreme fighting, rage outbursts, inner problems with friend groups, problems with teachers, problems with authority figures, problems with anybody who Mackenzie was told no. Anybody who ever said to Mackenzie Shirilla the word no, she had a problem with. They were out to get her. They were wrong, right? And the Shirillas and at Love Boston, thank you so much. And you are exactly right. But to say did not have appropriate parental guidance, it's not even not appropriate. It's they fed the worst possible parts of a sick person to make what was a horrible situation exponentially worse. Exponentially worse. They took a bad scenario and essentially fed it, they watered it, they gave it fertilizer, and they nursed it into an absolute monster who they continue to nurture as such right now. Right now, to this very fucking moment, the Shirilla family is nurturing a monster. And it's very sad because she could get better. But probably not with mom, a constant presence in her ear. That's the truth. It's so sad. Okay, let's take a closer look. So I'm going to play this. Let's throw this up on the screen. Oh, what is playing? Here we go.
It'll die down, just like it did last time.
Okay, so important. This is a phone call. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Between these are just quick calls. We're not going to go deep into these calls now, but these are calls after the verdict, I believe, and before sentencing. After verdict and before sentencing. Yes. So, and that was a pretty short, it seemed like that was a short turnaround time in Mackenzie's case. I know in other cases, like, in the Corey Richards case, it was months. But in this case, it seemed to be a relatively quick turnaround between verdict and sentencing. Listen very carefully here, though, because these little conversations we're going to hear between Mackenzie and her mom, there's a lot in here that these short discussions kind of highlight. So let's see if you can hear. Maybe I'll take myself off the screen. It'll be easier.
And it'll die down, just like it did last time.
Yeah, but why is it making, what's so, I don't even know.
Who knows? That's what I mean. Is the world that bored?
There's nothing, important going on, like hunger or something like that?
I know, exactly.
Right. So, you see how in this stupid interaction where, Natalie is conveying to Mackenzie that there's been an uptick in news about Mackenzie's social media presence after the verdict. And this is something that Natalie always does. And actually, it's one of the big things that Mackenzie always asks about. And I'm sure she's doing it as we speak right now. They're probably on the phone at this very moment discussing this very thing, because this is what Mackenzie cares about. Still, to this day, she cares about her name being circulated in the public. But equally important from Mom's perspective, Mom is so understands how fragile Mackenzie is. She really understands it. She doesn't understand how she made it exponentially worse, but she understands that her daughter's mental health sits on a fragile little knife's edge. So she doesn't like to tell her, quote, bad news. She doesn't like to communicate the truth about anything, honestly, about anything. So she tries to highlight the positive and downplay the negative, right? So the good news in this call is, oh, there's more support for you on our Facebook page or whatever. The bad news, yeah, there's some bad press too, like a guilty verdict, right? And as they're talking, Mom is trying to make her feel better. So Mom is saying to Mackenzie, oh, who knows? I mean, these people, they're internet trolls. She often will use the phrase trolls. They're just trolls. They have nothing better to do with their time. Like, come on. Like, there's nothing more important that you could be doing. And then, of course, Mackenzie jumps in on that also. However, these two utterly unimaginably stupid people. Unimaginably stupid. And by the way, in case you haven't heard these calls, on every single call at some point, Natalie Shirilla reminds Mackenzie not to say anything because they're being listened to. She is so acutely aware that someone is listening. In every call, she reminds Mackenzie not to don't say anything. So she tries to get her instead to talk about, I guess, what Natalie sees as like unimportant discussion. However, because of that, we get a total and complete picture of what these two sound and act like when they're interacting about really insignificant things or significant things too, right? So we get this amazing portrait of their dynamic as they discuss, anything and everything that Mom deems, not going to interfere, quote unquote, with their case, with their appeals. And in this discussion, Mom and Mackenzie make it very clear that they don't think the loss of Dom and Davion is newsworthy at all or important, because it's nothing important. And here's the thing about these two delusional, sick monsters. And I hate to use the word monster. I really don't like to use it because I understand, there's mentally unwell people in this world. But it's hard with these two because it is so unbelievable. It is so unbelievable, the level of just outright disrespect, disregard. I mean, callous. It's just so disgusting. And Natalie knows better, right? Mackenzie doesn't. Mackenzie really doesn't. I mean, she is, what I would liken Mackenzie to me is a lot like, when you're like 3.5-year-old, if you have kids or maybe, even just a cousin or a niece or a nephew, whatever, 3.5, they say terrible twos, but it's not exactly true. In my experience, it's more like 3, right? 3.5 even, because that's when they start interfacing with other kids like pre-K, kindergarten. In fact, my daughter's first day of pre-K, one of her fellow students tried to push another kid down the stairs. That was like day one of school, of pre-K, right? Because for some of the kids, it was the first time that they had been in a big group of other kids since, they were born. So this is an age where kids test boundaries. How much can I get away with, right? Will my parents, if I touch this, if I put my finger really close to this thing, is mom going to yell? And when is she going to yell? And right, they do the testing. We all know what I'm talking about. So this is like what Mackenzie is today, right now, at 21 years old. She is an out of control 3.5-year-old monster whose parents have not only failed miserably to teach her anything of value, they have nurtured to ensure that the worst parts of Mackenzie Shirilla become much bigger and exponentially outgrow any chance that this child had at being a well-adjusted and, well-balanced, mentally stable person. And for that, I blame her parents, because Natalie Shirilla definitely knows better. Now, I will also tell you, her father has anger issues. Not that you don't already know, but in fact, there were times when Natalie wouldn't let her father in the courtroom because he couldn't control his outbursts. So she at some point kind of said, we're not letting you in the room. In retrospect, she refers to those as like, medical issues or something. She's not honest about why he wasn't there in these different points. She wasn't there because she was a witness, so she couldn't be in the courtroom for the majority of the trial. Dad wasn't there because he couldn't handle himself. He couldn't control his mouth. Right? So, oh my God. It's so unbelievable. It's so unbelievable. So let's listen on. So, but the point here is obvious, right? Like, these two clowns do not understand that the world is interested in this story because this absolutely out of control toddler drove her car into a wall at 100 miles per hour and murdered 2 young, beautiful men. That's the story. And that's the part of the story that these two clowns just keep overlooking completely, like want no part of. It's extraordinary. It really is. Absolutely extraordinary.
But there's a lot of people that are talking and they have your back on all the comment threads too, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that makes me really nervous.
It's just, I just want you to be safe, that's all. I'm your mom, that's my job. I just want you to be safe, that's all. I'm your mom, that's my job.
Okay.
So Monday's going to come, Monday's going to go. And
so this one is crazy to me. I mean, if you really listen carefully, it happens fast. But this entire dialogue that they're having, this is just after the verdict and prior to sentencing. It's not the first call after the verdict. That call is another conversation entirely. Unbelievable. This is, right, maybe later even that day or the next day. And what's happening here is Natalie is trying to, it took me a while, guys. By the way, it wasn't immediate that I understood what was happening in their dynamic. Took some time for me to understand what the hell is going on here, right? Because some of the time it's clear from Natalie's language that she's being honest and she really, that she isn't being deceptive. Let me put it that way. In other words, when she says to her daughter, you didn't do this and we know you're innocent, right? Some of the time when she says that, it appears as though she believes what she's saying. Other times, it's so obvious that she doesn't believe what she's saying at all. And her discussion with Mackenzie around the sentencing was one of those times where it was very clear she doesn't believe it at all. So then you have to ask yourself, you're so obviously not doing your daughter any favors here, right? Like, placating your adult child who is facing murder charges does not seem like the best strategy for success, right? Going forward. But that is what she's doing. So let's listen to this again, because it just It is everything. It's exactly the dynamic, and it's the very reason that Dom and Davion are not alive, is this conversation right here. Okay, here we go.
A lot of people that are talking and they have your back in all the comment threads too, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that makes me really nervous.
It's just, I just want you to be safe, that's all. I'm your mom, that's my job. I just want you to be safe, that's all. I'm your mom, that's my job.
So Mackenzie says, it makes me really nervous. And I cut it out. What they're talking about here is, what is the judge going to do? Is she going to give me a really long sentence? At the same time, Mackenzie is advocating getting off of the mental health wing or, floor of the jail. She wants to go to general population. So they're kind of going back and forth in this dialogue. But Mom, you can hear it here, I just want you to be safe. Well, wait, what is that? What do you mean? Mackenzie's talking about being anxious about spending the rest of her life in jail, which seems in this situation to be an appropriate thing to be nervous about. And Mom is saying, I just want you to be safe. I'm your mom. That's my job. What is going on here? All right, so we'll keep listening.
So Monday's going to come, Monday's going to go, and then we'll just move on.
What if they give me the death penalty?
Hi, they won't. They can't. And even if they did, that can be appealed too.
It's so shocking. So Mom says, Monday's going to come, Monday's going to go. No big deal. Now we're talking about the sentencing of her daughter in a murder case, right? And if you didn't know what we were talking about here, you would think are we going to have peanut butter and jelly for breakfast? You would think they're having a conversation about the most mundane, irrelevant thing in the world. But no, they're talking about whether her daughter is going to, and in this conversation, not only spend the rest of her life in prison, but actually Mackenzie brings up the death penalty. Now, let me ask you a question, guys. Really think about this, okay? What does it mean that Mackenzie does not know already? She's already had a trial. There's already been a verdict awarded in this trial. She doesn't know what the sentencing options or possibilities on the table could have been from the start. She didn't sit down with the lawyer or her parents, and they didn't say, hey, Mackenzie, just so you understand what you're being charged with, this is what you're being charged with. These are what the sentencing possibilities are. Nope. And when Mackenzie finally does speak up, she says, what if they give me the death penalty? And Mom, oh, come on, Mackenzie, they can't do that. But even if they could, we'll just appeal anyway. We'll just fight that too. Okay, so at a certain point, as I'm listening to this, something is very wrong here, right? I mean, something is very, very wrong here. This is an appropriately serious conversation, right? This is the kind of discussion that you would expect to have with your child right from the start. So a number of things are clear from this very short interaction between the two of them. First, apparently nobody sat down with Mackenzie and explained from the beginning what was happening. Later on, just to spare you the hours and hours, the agony of having to go through all these phone calls, because it is agonizing at different times, hearing about, whether she should braid her leg hair or not. In some of these calls, it's very clear that they really just didn't even, there was no awareness of what their defense was going to be. There was no discussion with their attorney about the defense that they were going to put on. It appears as though, whether this is because the defense attorney didn't understand the case, or they made it seem like this was no big deal to the defense attorney, which I can't imagine how that could possibly be the case. But it seemed like everybody in their camp minimized the whole thing. Like it wasn't that big a deal. Like, oh, she's just going to get a slap on the wrist and be like sent away because she's this cute little girl. Mackenzie too. Now, I should also tell you that Mackenzie didn't pay attention during court at all. She would just sit around and she tells you, she says, oh, I would just get too annoyed and frustrated. So I just would sit there and think. So she's not even paying attention to what's going on in the courtroom as it's happening right in front of her. Okay. In her own case, no idea what's going on. Her parents don't know what's going on. She doesn't know what's going on. And nobody told her that, a death penalty case, that's something that right? Of course. And we all know this just from being like very distant observers of the legal system, even. Obviously, if it's a death penalty case, we're going to know that from the outset. That's something that it's a different kind of animal, right, from the start. Don't worry, because even if it was, we'll appeal that too. Like, we're just going to keep fighting, baby. Don't you worry. All right. So obviously, something is really wrong. Okay. Something is really wrong. And this conversation sent truly like alarm bells in my head, more so, believe it or not, than some of the other conversations, because there's just something very delusional happening here. This call is not grounded in reality, right? We're talking about the death penalty, and Natalie's like, oh, don't worry, we'll just fight it. Wait, what? What? Right? Do you see what I'm saying? So this spoke to me in a way that says there is another motive that Natalie Shirilla obviously has that is not revealing itself in this conversation, because this is truly absurdity, truly absurd. Okay. So let's hear this last part again, just so you can hear it.
The death penalty.
Hi, they won't. They can't. And even if they did, that can be appealed too. And they're not, so don't even worry about it.
So don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Don't worry about the sentencing or spending the rest of your life in prison. Don't worry if you're going to be put to death, because that could be appealed too. That's what her mother is saying. So, at a certain point, she's saying, oh, my job is to protect you. My job as your mother is to keep you safe. Well, actually, safety comes in many forms, doesn't it? Because what is the ultimate way to keep your very emotionally unstable child safe, right? What's really the only way to do that? I will tell you what doesn't work. Throwing yourself in front of her as often as possible so that she doesn't have to ever take responsibility for anything she ever says or does isn't the way to ensure her safety. But that has been mom's strategy since she's probably 10 and 11 years old. At the first sign of any challenge psychologically for Mackenzie Shirilla. So, of course, Mackenzie is what we would call a textbook borderline personality disordered person. She is a textbook example of borderline personality. Now, here's what I want to say. That does not mean, and I want to be very clear about this, that every person with borderline personality disorder diagnoses looks like Mackenzie. That is not true. Just like any mental illness, there's a wide spectrum of symptoms and how they show up. And I will tell you that I don't like labeling. I don't like diagnoses. I don't hand them out or even talk about them easily, right? I'm not going to just like liberally start assigning diagnostics. For me to be saying this, it means this is a very seriously mentally unwell person, right? This is a serious mental illness. This isn't, some anxiety or some sadness or just like, teenage shit. She is a very unwell person. And this is a very real disorder that she has, right? So this is a severe version of this disorder. And what it means, so this is a personality disorder, and all that really means is that how somebody behaves like normally as they go through life day to day, moment to moment, deviates considerably from what we normally expect, right? So all the personality disorders, essentially, that's the common denominator, is that somebody's personality is just different from everybody else. Now, if you listen for even 2 minutes to any of Mackenzie's friends, old friends like that, her ex-boyfriend, I think his name is Tyler, her friend whose house she was at the night of this incident, whose name is escaping me, but Paul, I think is his name. He's her gay friend. I think his name's Paul. Seems like a very, very nice kid. All of these kids, anybody that you talk to or you listen to talk to about Mackenzie, whatever the conversation, they all knew that Mackenzie wasn't like everybody else, right? They talked about it in different ways. It wasn't consistent necessarily in terms of what they highlight. Some of these kids were closer to Mackenzie than others. Some of them thought she was responsible for the accident. Others didn't. But everybody could tell you without blinking an eye that her personality was distinctly different from anybody else's, right? So that's the first thing. That is what a personality disorder means. That is the world that we are trending in, okay? First and foremost. It is also called emotionally unstable disorder in the ICD, the International Classification of Diseases, and they are used pretty much interchangeably these days. So let's keep going. Let me see, make sure you can hear.
She's probably going to give me like 80 years in jail just to like fuck with me.
Yeah. Well, we know something crazy's coming. Just by the way she's talking.
They're just like doing too much. Like, I don't understand like any of this shit. Like,
Me
what?
either, Kenzie.
But I'm scared. Like, I don't know.
I know.
I
I'm
don't know
sorry.
what to do. It's everywhere?
Well, it was last time too, though. It's like.
What do you mean it was last time? Like when it first happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like that.
No, it's not. But this time it's like saying that like I did it all on purpose.
What?
Now this time it's saying that like making the whole world know that they just think I did it on purpose. Well, I'm found guilty of doing it on purpose when I fucking didn't do it on purpose.
I know. I know.
I didn't even do it on accident. It wasn't even anything.
So I don't know if you caught that last bit there, and we're not going to do the statement analysis for this little paragraph now, but this last sentence tells you like everything you need to know, right? She says, I didn't even do it on accident. It wasn't even anything. That is Mackenzie's version of events just prior to sentencing. Okay. So whenever you see those clips of her reading that little statement, right? She looks so innocent and cute. This is what is going on with her and her mom days before she stands up and reads that statement. And thank God that this judge was willing to, speak the truth, honestly. Thank God she saw it the way she did, because I will tell you, and this is really important, this was the most predictable scenario. Now, maybe Davion wasn't as predictable, although I'm sure with enough information, we could make it fit. Because she did not like Davion. That is clear as day from her statement. Clear as day. So when people say that he was just cargo in the back, that is not true. She was pissed at him too. He wasn't just cargo in the back. And I suspect that it's because he was staying with them. Now, I don't have verification of that because I'm getting kind of mixed feedback, right? Some people say that he was staying there at the time. Other people say no, he was living at home. So I'm not sure whether he was going back to the house with them that night or not. But according to Paul, I think his name is, the guy whose house they were at that night, who we're going to hear from in a minute, that is where Davion was going, home to Dominic's. And if that's the case, then it's quite clear why she was pissed at Davion. And we'll talk about that in just a bit. And don't worry, I've got you guys. I'm going to get you in just a minute. Let's keep listening here. So you see, and this is the important thing. She's not even she cannot even take responsibility for the accident. She can't even say this was a tragic accident and I was at the wheel. And if I could, she cannot even own that much because she says it wasn't even an accident. It was nothing. It was nothing. It was nothing. Because this is the sentiment that her mother has nurtured and watered and helped to foster. It is not your fault, Mackenzie. Nothing is your fault. And when I tell you that she is strict about it, Natalie, like, how dare you blame yourself? And the reason that she does it, and the reason that mom is so quick to dismiss the death penalty, oh, don't worry, we're just going to fight it anyway, even if it was, is because she thinks that what she's doing is going to save Mackenzie from hurting herself. That's what she thinks. Mom believes that she is helping her daughter. She is, quote, keeping her safe because that's what moms do. This is how delusional these people really are. This is so delusional.
I'm doing it on purpose when I fucking didn't do it on purpose.
I know.
I didn't do it on accident. It wasn't even anything. It wasn't like I don't even fucking know what happened.
I know.
Honey. What are they saying in the comments?
I'm not reading anything. I'm not clicking on anything. They're just telling me. I don't care. Who cares? I just want you to be safe. That's all.
There it is again. I just want you to be safe. That's all. I just want you to be safe.
We have to know, right, what's going on so we know, so we can be safe. That's all. I'm not reading anything.
Just crazy.
That's all. No worries. We will get through this. We'll get through this together. It's no different than somebody else trying to take somebody else down. You know what I mean? It's no big deal.
It's no different than somebody else trying to take somebody else down. So, and I'm not sure that the Russo family appreciates the degree to which Mackenzie blames them for this. I mean, we're going to take a look at this more closely now, but something to keep in mind. This is something that's common. Like if I don't have information, so like as a person, my personality, and you guys know this because you've seen it, right? For the last year, like I'm kind of almost OCD like this. If I don't have knowledge about something, like I want to know what happened to John O'Keefe, I'm prepared to drop my life and spend almost every day as much time as possible investigating until I have what I think is a comfortable sense of the answer to that question, right? That's who I am. That's why I have absurd number of, I'm so educated and in so many degrees. It's all because I want to know stuff. And when I don't know stuff, I get frustrated and agitated and I feel like I need to know, right? What is that about? Who the hell knows? But some people aren't like that, right? And people like Mackenzie, because it takes too much effort to like go get answers. So she just makes shit up. She just invents stories and then pretends that they're facts, right? So an example of this. So at one point, Mackenzie is talking to her mom about sentencing, whatever. And mom is saying, oh, I'm making a smoothie, right? Mom is making a smoothie. And mom says, oh, I'm going to take my baby spinach and I'm going to put the baby spinach as like the base of the smoothie. Mackenzie's like, baby spinach, that's genetically modified. And don't use that. That's bad. This is an example, right? It's just a stupid example, but this is what you do when you don't have information, you don't really know, but you got to make sense of things, right? So baby spinach, for those that are not familiar, is just spinach that's harvested early. That's it. It's not, inbreeding dogs. So it's not genetically modified spinach, as Mackenzie will have you believe, right? And again, I'm not making fun of her. I'm pointing out that this is what you do. When you don't have information, you make stuff up. This is what Mackenzie does. And her mom is fueling it, right? Facilitating it, making it not only possible, but increasing the odds that she just keeps doing this rather than getting answers to just make shit up, which is very dangerous. Because if you can just make shit up all the time, then what are the consequences for your behavior, right? Why not crash into a wall, guys? Because at a certain point, if I can do absolutely anything from running my mouth to a police officer to, drive erratically, to tell my boyfriend, call him every name in the book, and then get back together an hour later, treat my friends, my family, teachers, administrators, other drivers on the road, like everybody is just a big inconvenience. They're in my way and they're stopping me from doing whatever the F I want to do at any moment. If that is my belief, then there's no responsibility. It's not like a cause and effect reality, right? So for Mackenzie, life really it's not cause and effect. It's all kind of like random happenstance, like particles just sort of floating into each other. Right. So, and I'm saying this for a very specific reason.
I just want you to be safe. That's
Let's
all.
get to this. And
No
then I will
anxiety.
Yes, you
take
should,
your
make,
guys' comment.
you should really make a Facebook page where it's like
No big deal. I just want you to be safe. That's all. No anxiety.
I want you to be safe. That's all. No anxiety. So right there, what does that tell you in mom's brain? Safety equals no anxiety. Anxiety in mom's brain is the word that encompasses the tantrums. That's how mom likes to verbalize or communicate to others what the problem with Mackenzie is. Her anxiety. Mm-hmm. Right. So you see what I'm saying? So you see how safety for mom really means Mackenzie can't hurt herself or anybody else for that matter. That's what this is all about. So this big charade, right? So when you hear mom over the next couple of days and you see this family putting out all this bullshit about text messages, and keep in mind that she is so aware of how dangerous her daughter's, quote, anxiety is, that the word safety they go together. They're like connected, right? No anxiety and safety are in the same word association bubble. It's absolutely, absolutely, absolutely disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. That's the only way I can say it. At I won't drink the Kool-Aid is a member for 1 month. Thank you so much for all you do. Can you please show us your pretty nails? I can. They're really they're very messed up right now, but there they are. There you go. There's my pretty nails. Mhm. Thanks so much for your support. I won't drink the Kool-Aid. I love your name. Hi, at Dad's favorite mom sends $9.99. This is unrelated, but Sam, you have to go back and watch the waterfall video again during the time John is talking to Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. John and Brian Higgins are definitely arguing. I will 100% look. You, I was gonna say, maybe email me. I don't remember them talking. But you're saying, I'm assuming this is like right after he gets there. Because you're not the first person that's mentioned this to me in the last few days. I absolutely will definitely check it out. I will check it out for sure. Thank you, at your dad's favorite mom. I will check it out. Yeah, I mean, the more that I think about it, and we can talk about this again in a bit, the more that I think about it, the more I start to see how it was really about those two, right? That whatever was going on between them was about them, more than anything else. Like, I mean, Karen probably was a facilitator over the weeks that preceded that moment, but I don't necessarily think that night it was about her. I think it was about the interactions between them. That is, my belief at the moment. It could change, right? So I will definitely check it out. Hello, at Balancing Debits and Credits sends $20 from the jump. Natalie lied for her. Oh, yeah. I almost can't believe she was in charge with aiding. Yes, absolutely. Oh, thank you, IMO, in my opinion. Sometimes the most obvious, just it doesn't, so I appreciate it. It's like the tithings, right? But that me and Vince, Aiden, and I could not understand what tithings spelled out in front of us. We're like, what does that say? Tithe. So thank you so much, though. Thank you for your support. You're absolutely right. Well, and she's still lying for her guys. So remember, we talked about this before. At the very beginning, I think this was this, did we just talk about this or was this earlier? So remember that they speak in this gypsy language, right? They have the E's, they throw the EEZ sound in between all of the consonants, basically in a word. And what's the most alarming about this language that they have together is how quickly Mackenzie can speak in it, right? I mean, she can just pull words so fast. Now, maybe it's not as hard as it might seem. I mean, it's very possible that this language is, easier to learn and use than it might appear on the outside. Fine. But the first thing Mackenzie does when the police walk in the room is turn to her mother and say very clearly in that gypsy language that, can't we just tell them that I had a seizure or something? That's what she says. Now, the other night on the JFK folks on their program, Natalie Shirilla appears, and she's trying to make the argument that that's not what Mackenzie said. No, that's not what she said because there's not enough Z's in the seizure, right? The only problem with this argument, as some of you maybe have seen, I'm listening, I'm just like walking around, like going for a walk, listening to their phone calls, and I hear Natalie telling Mackenzie that is what the conversation was about, the seizures. So she is caught on these calls telling Mackenzie that is what they were talking about. So yeah, lied for her. She's been lying for her for the last decade. All she does is lie for her. I mean, lie for her doesn't even begin to cover it. Doesn't begin to cover it. This woman is so terrified of her daughter's outbursts. When that accident happened, that was the culmination of Natalie Shirilla's worst fears coming to life right in front of her. That was absolutely what Natalie Shirilla laid awake at night worrying was going to happen to her precious toddler, Mackenzie. Without a doubt, right? So once that happened, it must have gotten exponentially worse because now she knows what her daughter's capable of. Now she's really got to teach her or treat her like a psych patient. And that's what she does. She treats her like a psychiatric patient. That is how Natalie communicates with her daughter. She placates her. She's completely deceptive to her own child because she doesn't want Mackenzie to feel any way that's bad, right? She doesn't want Mackenzie to have a negative self-concept, to look at herself and feel bad. That's what it's all about for Natalie. Shielding Mackenzie from having any thought in her head that makes her question herself, which is exactly the opposite of what needs to happen for Mackenzie to ever be a well-adjusted human that can join the rest of us in the world. Because if you think this is an isolated incident, if you think this isn't going to happen again the second that she gets out of prison, I mean, if something doesn't change, it could just get worse. I mean, that's the truth, right? It could just get worse. Probably will. At 2D4061 sends $9.99. M is vaping medical marijuana. I noted the packaging when, oh, interesting. A vape pen has 70 to 87% THC in it. There's no way I could drive after vaping, so I cannot imagine she could drive. So we're going to talk about that in a huge way. So a couple of things about Mackenzie. By the time she was a sophomore in high school, she would routinely say, like, I can't get high anymore because she smoked so much marijuana and her THC levels were so high that she couldn't get high. So she would have to go on these little breaks from smoking so that she could get high again. And this comes up pretty frequently in their text exchange. In the text, because I've downloaded the thousands and thousands of text messages between Dom and Mackenzie. And this comes up where like Dom will periodically say, oh, well, you know, you'll get to get high again, right? Something like he references her coming to the end of one of these periods where she's not smoking. And based on the results of her urine analysis, and this, I have to go back and look more closely. So I would say I'm 70% sure about this. Because I didn't personally read the report, the actual toxicology. But this is what I heard the prosecutor saying, and I also heard echoed in other places, that according to the toxicology, of course she had THC in her system, but that she actually wasn't smoking this day. And I think this comes up in the Netflix documentary too, because in the documentary, they try to say that her lungs were black or whatever, but Mackenzie would do this routinely. She would take a little break so that she could get her tolerance down. You know, I mean, look, the truth is that if you already have ever had a tolerance, it's going to take a quarter of the amount of time to get it back, right? So this trick, like stopping for a day so that you can get your tolerance down, is really not going to be very effective. But Mackenzie is right, lives in La La Land, so it doesn't really make a difference. Here's the thing. And let's take a look at this now, because I do believe that THC played a factor here, but not in the way that you would guess, right? Certainly not in the way you would guess, because you're absolutely right, Tutti Frutti. We're talking about, you know, thousands. Her THC levels are in the thousands and thousands and tens of thousands. That's, you know, you can't smoke blunts the way that she is in these videos, or just bong hit after bong hit after bong hit every day.
Yes,
and
you should
just
make,
like it was before. Not have a
you should
crazy
really make a Facebook page where it's like talking about how like this is just wrong and like
Because he's not talking on the phone right now about things. You can't talk on the phone. We have to talk in person.
We're never going to
sometime.
be able to do that, though.
Yes, we will.
When?
And then as soon as we go to round two, then that person will come and talk to
Round
you.
2. Okay. So let's take a closer look at her diagnostic picture. And this is really important because once we go through this, you just can't unsee it, right? So the first thing with somebody who has a borderline personality disorder, the driver, the thing that is really motivating them is this intense fear of abandonment. And just like a little kid is going to test you repeatedly to try to get your attention, right? Because attention is the currency to a 3-year-old. They don't care like if it's bad attention, good attention. What they want is your attention. And they're going to do just about anything to get it, right? And so as a parent, if you have a kid who's misbehaving a lot, what do you learn? You learn ignore it, right? Put them in timeout and walk away because what they want is your attention. So if you run over and you scream at them, even though it's negative attention, some kids would rather have that than no attention at all. Most kids, in fact. Not my kid, thank God, though. Thank God my kid does not like that kind of attention at all. So this is how Mackenzie is too, right? Now, the fear of abandonment is so intense. She would do things like in 9th grade, they had a group chat, a friends group chat, and she would blow this group chat up, just call incessantly every morning before school to try to get the group to weigh in on what she should wear to school. And it got to the point, and this is just an example, but this kind of incessant, nonstop neediness got to the point where most of those kids couldn't be friends with her. Like one by one, they just kind of stopped, taking her calls because that level of like holding you hostage because they need you so badly, right? And if you don't give them that immediate attention, then they get angry. And what ends up happening is you'll do anything you can to make the anger go away. So you give in. You sit there on the phone. Oh, you look, yeah, that's so cute. Why don't you wear that? Right? Because you're trying to find a way to calm them down. So you appease them. You give in. You don't explain that that behavior is not appropriate, that it's 7 a.m, that I too need to get dressed, that, the right thing to do is to consider other people, Mackenzie, have needs also. They have needs and thoughts and fears, right? They're worrying about what they're going to wear to 9th grade too. So they don't have the bandwidth to navigate your anxieties 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, right? But she doesn't know that. And nobody ever steps in to do the correction because then she has a tantrum. And the tantrums in the Shirilla household result in the police being called, the police coming to the house because she's threatening suicide and breaking shit. That's what happens in the Shirilla house when their 9th grade Mackenzie does something and they try to parent her because they already at that point had lost the battle, right? So you already know that by the time Mackenzie's in high school, these people had screwed up beyond royally, right? They had given everything to her already. They had already laid the foundation for an out of control maniac who looks like a narcissist because she doesn't consider other people's feelings. But this is the thing that's different. So this is what's different about narcissism than BPD. We'll get there. So I'm almost there. So remember, I mentioned emotion dysregulation, emotional instability. Now, with the most common way that this manifests is in rage episodes, right? Anger, like fury. And you can hear it in Mackenzie when she's talking to her mom. You can almost hear the escalation in her voice, and you can often see how mom reacts to it, which is interesting to watch the dynamic, right? But the driving force, so another example, and we can take a look at this too if we have time. In the text messages with Dominic, he'll drop her off at like 11:30 at night on a school night. Mackenzie will text him like every 10 minutes throughout the whole night until the next morning. And then Dom will wake up. And by the time he wakes up and sees that there's been 10 text messages, she's like, the last message is like, I'm breaking up with you. Like, or I'm breaking up with you if you don't get back to me right now. Like, where the fuck are you? You know, are you cheating on me? She didn't actually say that in this example, but that's where this kind of person goes. They immediately, because you're not there at their whimsical beck and call, she gets it in her head that he's going to leave, that he's abandoning her, that he's not there for her, that he doesn't love her, that he doesn't care for her. And it starts to create anxiety is really not even the right word because it's a panic. And then that panic, what drives the out of control behavior. And that's where you see the insanity, just absolute recklessness to the extreme, right? The panic. And when you add impulsivity, someone who's been on a self-destructive course for 7 years with no guardrails, no boundaries, no personal accountability, no sense at all that their behavior has consequences, right? With a mother who truly is delusional. I mean, truly. It starts to get pretty predictable. We start to get to the point where it's like, oh, wait a minute. So this was just waiting to happen for a long time, right? It's almost miraculous it didn't happen sooner. Another important variable. So one of the things that, a lot of her friends on the Netflix documentary said, and you might even think, when you see her on TikTok and she's, half naked, making the kissy face poses, it might appear to you that she seems self-confident, but really it's being driven by the desperate need for approval and for affirmation, for you to tell her she's beautiful and cool. You're so cool, Mackenzie. You look so good. Blah, blah. She needs it so badly for a sense of reassurance that she's okay, that it becomes like a driver. Again, these are compulsive driving forces in her behavior. They become overwhelming. And there's no sense of true self, right? So think of it this way. If the only things that you care about are superficial, like getting likes, or, somebody thinks you're cool, or Dom texts you back, if there's nothing underneath that, there's no, like, I'm trying to also go to school to study, plants, whatever, who cares what? Or I really want to help people. I want to be a nurse, or, we're complicated creatures, but purpose is a big part of what keeps us grounded and focused. And if there's nothing but just out of control, what we would say maybe the id, right? Like this desire that just gets so out of control, what happens is you eventually realize that there's no winning that way because none of it produces anything meaningful. Even if you get everything that little part of you wants all the time, like it's like with the marijuana, you can't get higher. So at a certain point, even smoking weed doesn't satisfy you. All the love, all the accolades, all the attention, all the you're so cool, you're so beautiful is in the world doesn't mean anything because it's right. It's all coming from a place of like desperate insecurity. And in these text messages with Dom, she routinely talks about how she hates herself. That's why I fucking hate myself so much because you do this shit to me. It's constant. I mean, it's every third sentence that for thousands of pages of text messages with Dominic. It's abusive isn't the right word, guys. Like, this is extraordinarily mentally instability, like mental instability on steroids. This woman is truly mentally ill, truly. And the fact that her parents do not even, they act like it's not a real thing is extraordinary by itself. It's disgusting. At one point, if you haven't heard this yet, it's breathtaking. Mom is actually laughing because Frank Russo, Dominic's father, says on like a social media post after the verdict and after sentencing, something to the effect of, I'm glad she only got 15 to life. Hopefully like she gets help. And mom is cracking up like, ha ha ha, isn't that so funny that ha ha ha. And Mackenzie's like, what? They think I need help. Well, if I need help, then your whole family needs to be, whatever. And it's like, really? Well, the funny thing is, Mackenzie, like, whatever you think they've done, you're in prison for murdering 2 people and they're not, right? I mean, if your daughter can't even acknowledge that she was the person driving the car in the accident that killed 2 people, I mean, it says everything you need to know about who these people are. Everything you need to know. It's dangerous is what it is. Like Mackenzie is like a weapon by herself. That's the truth. And the way that she operates, the way that somebody with a severe borderline personality operates is by using your worst fears against you. So if you love her, if I'm your mother, right? Obviously, as your mother, you would know that the worst thing I could think of is if, God forbid, something happens to you, right, as my child. So she knows and learned long ago that that's the way to get your parents to do just about anything you want when you want them to do it, right? Fuck you, I'm going to kill myself, that kind of stuff. And that's what you see in in the messages with Dom. That same pattern, just over and over and over again. Threats, 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 threats. Whether it's threats to hurt herself, threats to break up with him, threats to ruin his life, threats to break something, just incessant threatening, constant. And the emotional dysregulation, there's no balance. It's just constant, like a pounding of instability. Constant. Right? And here's the one, though, that we really, for me, the accident itself comes down to 2 variables that are really harder to see, that are not as obvious, right? I think we all can see she's an out of control toddler who's, gets into these rage episodes. And as soon as Dom doesn't give her the attention she wants, we could all see a world where Mackenzie has a, meltdown and, out of spite, takes the car and rams it into a wall, right? But this last symptom is the most important, in my opinion, because if you combine a tendency towards disassociation, now disassociation can take many forms, right? So disassociation can mean just feeling like out of your own body, like not present, feeling like life is happening, but you're like kind of outside of yourself watching it. In its worst form, right? You've probably heard of dissociative identity disorder, people that actually have multiple personalities because they sort of disassociate to the point where they split into different parts of themselves. This is more like the former, right? Like the sense of unreality, like I'm out of my body. Like, this isn't real. this isn't real. None of this is real. Well, yeah, because if everything you say or do does not have a consequence, right? So, for example, Mackenzie worked at Dunkin' Donuts and apparently was so rude to customers, she would like actively talk them out of, getting breakfast or out of buying something. So, I don't know what wound up happening there, but she's an out of control maniac who never had a single sense at any moment that she was responsible for what was happening in her life, right? Another example, her teacher didn't have a pencil, and Mackenzie's losing it, texting Dom about the fact that her teacher doesn't have a pencil and why do they always do this to me and why are my teachers like this and how the fuck does this bitch not have a pencil for me? She says this isn't her classroom, but we've been teaching in this room. You've been teaching in this room, bitch, for the last 8 months. Like, how do you not have a pencil for your students? What? Like, right? What is the obvious answer to this question? If you are listening to Mackenzie talking about this, it's like, Mackenzie, why don't you have a pencil? Right? You're the student. That's the teacher. Why should that teacher? You're a senior in freaking high school. You don't know how to bring a pencil into the classroom? It's like 2 months before her senior year, which, by the way, is another conversation because she wasn't going to pass. So that's another variable that her parents don't want you to know, that they're openly, just blatantly lying about, right? She was failing miserably, almost didn't graduate. She graduated because other people did her work for her. 100%. She would pay them, or Dom would give them money to do her work for her. She's just completely out of control, right? Completely out of control. And if there's no accountability ever, then what happens when you combine this disassociation, this unreality with these anger outbursts, and back to what Tutti Frutti 61 was saying about the marijuana. So this is the thing, and this is where, if it's true, and I don't know this for sure, I think I'm about 70% sure from what I've seen in the paperwork and in the videos and interviews. If it is true that Mackenzie was not smoking right before this accident, in the 24 hours before the accident, because she was trying to get her tolerance down, if that is the case, then what we most likely had on top of everything else is a dramatic mood drop because she was in marijuana withdrawal. And this is the thing, right? Like, most people, even police officers, are so kind of anesthetized to marijuana, like it's no big deal at all. But when you're talking about a 17-year-old girl with this type of underlying personality disposition, and then the levels of THC that were in her system and the dramatic way that cutting those levels so dramatically after doing it every day, the effect that's going to have, the primary effect that is going to have on anyone in that situation is mood dysregulation. And what does that look like? If you're a teenage girl, it looks like crazy shit in your head. It looks like you're walking out of the house that morning with Dom and Davion, and Dominic is walking out ahead of you with Davion talking about nothing, but he's not talking to you, and you don't like that. So in your head, fuck him, fuck this, he doesn't fucking care about me, and I'm so sick of this bullshit. And, if Davion's going to be there, and Davion wasn't supposed to stay over tonight, and now we're going to have, I'm going to have to deal with him, and he's not going to pay attention to me, and our day is going to be ruined. This is the shit that goes on in a person like Mackenzie's brain in these moments. And if you're adding on top of adding, right? So you've got a person who does not recognize that she's responsible for any outcome in her life because she doesn't take responsibility for anything. And it's pathological lack of responsibility, right? It's what do you mean you don't have a pencil for me, teacher? What do you mean you're not going to pass me even though I didn't turn in a single ounce of homework all year? It's your fault. Why is everybody coming down on me? That's the feeling, right? So you have already this child living in kind of a delusional reality. You start adding these variables together, and what you get is somebody, you know what? She probably truly did not understand, because this is a toddler, ladies and gentlemen, did not understand that when she intentionally, without a shadow of a doubt, intentionally put her foot on that gas and drove that car into that wall, in Mackenzie's brain, everybody gets up and walks out of it. That's the truth. Because this is a really mentally unstable person, a very, very sick person. And had this asshole troop, because that's what they are, they're just so beyond just delusional, just the assholes of the world, who right now, to this very day, are blaming Dominic for what happened to him and Davion. Not Mackenzie, Dominic. Right now, today. That's who's responsible for this. How that's even physically possible is another story. Completely different topic, right? Because it's not physically possible for Dominic to have done this. This is all Mackenzie. It's her little slipper that is permanently encrusted in the fucking, bottom half of that Toyota. Mackenzie's little slipper. But see, she did get up and walk away. And that's the problem. Because she did, at the last minute, turn the steering wheel. I have no doubt that she, at the last minute, turned the car so that the right side of the car got the full impact of the wall. And she went onto the dashboard. So, to me, that's the thing about this craziness, right? She's still, to this day, the only consequence this child has ever known is to be in prison, but she still doesn't connect the dots because she's not there because of her. She was, in Mackenzie's mind, she's not even responsible for the accident because that was like POTS or something. It's really sad. If something doesn't change when this child gets out of prison, she could even be more dangerous than when she went in. That's the truth. Because what happens when this kind of person gets a little older, right? What do you think happens? They get a little bit more savvy, right? They learn how to manage their dysregulation a little better. So they're a little bit more cunning, a little bit more manipulative, right? Their behavior is a little bit more crafty. So it's very, very alarming when you look at this. And this is the thing that kills me. Had this family used the obvious mental health defense, told the truth, and said, look at this endless evidence of my very mentally unstable child who had seen psychiatrists, refused to take the medication, refused to get help, right? Mom tries to pretend like Mackenzie ever went to a therapist for more than 15 minutes. It's absolutely disgraceful to even hear her try. She completely misrepresents that they had a mental health professional that was ready to testify. It turns out that person wasn't testifying on Mackenzie's behalf. That person was going to come and give stats about suicide, right? About how unlikely it is that, I guess, people commit suicide this way. Well, here's the problem with those very warped statistics. Let's look at those statistics if we are factoring in borderline personality. Oh, here they are. I don't know if you guys can see that. Well, research indicates that individuals with a borderline personality have a notably high risk of suicidal behavior. Estimates suggest that around 70 to 80% of people with a borderline personality may engage in suicidal behavior at some point in their lives. The rate of completed suicides in individuals with BPD is alarmingly high. Studies estimate that about 8 to 10% of individuals diagnosed with BPD will die by suicide. You see what I'm saying? So, still to this day, Mackenzie is holding her mother hostage because mom worries that she's going to do it again. And mom's biggest fear is exactly that. And what are these people advocating for? Oh, they want their daughter to get out of prison so that she can do this again to somebody else, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Exactly. Within hours. In fact, she's probably already doing it. I mean, I know she's got, she's in like the, I don't remember the name of the site, but it's like sugar daddy inmates, right? Where men give you money in your commissary for talking to them if you're in jail. I don't know the details exactly, but it's a good idea, I guess. And Reefer's Mom 1 sends $9.99. With all the work you're putting into these videos, you can't possibly have time to see patients anymore. I love your analysis on all these people and all these cases. Keep up the great work. Well, you know what, Reefer's Mom, thank you so much. First off, I do have a caseload. I'm very lucky. I've been with the same group for a long time. And they're all, we've been together for a very long time. So I don't see them every week per se, but maybe every other week. So it's funny because when I first got into the field, I used to say, make fun of those therapists that would keep clients for like 20 years and be like, how can you do that? Now I'm one of those people that has the same clients for a decade. So Ricky V sends $10, says just because. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Ricky V. I appreciate you so much. So kind, too kind. At Melly Girl sends $2. Lawnmower Mom leading to grandiose immaturity. Oh, it's so much worse than that because it's literally, she's a weapon. Like Mackenzie's not stupid. She just doesn't have information. So you have somebody who's not dumb, right? I mean, she's capable. She's a capable kid. Some of just the level of disregard, to give you an example. So Dominic in some of these texts, he's really upset. He's like at the grocery store, he's complaining about the fact that he doesn't have any money, that he's worried about finances. He's worried about having to take care of his mom financially. I'm not sure why or what's going on in that moment, but he's stressed about money. And Mackenzie then like word, right? Whatever. And he then says something else. And then she says, can we go to Saks, babe? Like, will you take me shopping at, an expensive clothing store? It's just, and he's like, Mackenzie, what the fuck? Like, do you just not think about me at all? And this is the day in and day out conversation that they have. And it's very painful because I think Dom understood Mackenzie. Like, for example, he wanted her to try to get therapy, to try to get help. And he wanted it so badly. I think he thought that maybe if she could get help, then they could be together. He knew they couldn't be unless she got help, but he really wanted that. So he would say to her, listen, Mackenzie, no matter what you say or do, I'm not going to break up with you. Right. And that's important because for somebody who's so afraid of abandonment, that is what she's always being motivated by, is like the fear that he's going to leave her. So she has to block him first. Right. So he eventually says to her, like, I'm not going to leave you no matter what you say or do, because I want us to get help. Because I think if we get help, then we could really do this. And they're now turning their attention to their future because she's got like 4 or 5 months left of high school. That's kind of what the whole, swirling around them right before the accident is exactly that. Like they're trying to figure out what's going to happen after high school. And of course, she just doesn't hear it. She doesn't listen. She perceives everything he says as a personal attack, even when he's trying to, like, literally pleading with his heart and soul for her to get help. She's like, fuck you, no thanks. Like, I don't need that shit. If I need a therapist, then you need, like, whatever. You need to go away to rehab. I mean, it's so immature. Exactly. It's so immature. It's so extreme immaturity. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Melly girl. Exactly. Borderline versus narcissist versus grandiose immaturity. So what really makes her borderline is just the extreme lability, like this constant emotional upheaval and the chronic, persistent terror of being abandoned. So when you really take, I mean, she's so borderline. It really is. It's almost like close your eyes and just put Mackenzie in a textbook where you see the words borderline. And that is really what it looks like in its most kind of quintessential stereotypical form. Now, that doesn't mean it's what it's always going to present like, but that is the way it presents in one form. And what's interesting, and I don't know this to be true, but from what I can tell, and I could be wrong, I don't see any trauma in Mackenzie's history. Now, studies suggest that there is a genetic component. It could be like up to 70% potentially of genetic variable. But usually what you see kind of grow this is trauma. And I just don't see it. At Barking Mad 3 cents $5. Sam, I hope my tag isn't insensitive. I'm just mad about dogs. Scratch Sonny for me. Oh, I know the dogs are such a pain in the ass, aren't they? My Sonny, I told you, when there's like any noise right outside the door, she's just gonna go nuts, and there's like nothing I can do about it. And that's what was happening a minute ago. It was probably the Amazon guy. At Ricky B sends $5. Kenzie has affluenza, like the Ethan Couch kid in Texas that killed 3 or 4 kids after drunk driving. Then his mom assisted in fleeing to Mexico. Right? And then when you hear, like when you saw in the Netflix documentary when she's talking about the POTS, and you see, God, it's like I have this clear image of her face. When the producer, I think it's the producer doing the interviewing, he asks, so what do you attribute the accident to? And it's like, how do you not be prepared for this question? This has got to be like the one question that is coming, right? And she like looks almost baffled, and she's like, you see the like wheels turning, and she's trying to figure out, how do I say, like, it's the POTS, or do I say medical condition, whatever. I mean, she can't even say it after all this time with all this practice in a clear sentence. It's really remarkable. It's remarkable. At Leaka G sends $4.99. BH looks like Sean Penn in one battle after another. That's funny. I kind of see it. I think I kind of see what you're saying. He kind of does. Except I still think Sean Penn is like exponentially better looking than BH for sure. Gina Campbell 8966699 sends $9.99. I think mom is happy, out of control. Daughter is in jail. Yeah. Yep. Yes. I think you're right. Can you imagine the stress from Mackenzie on a daily basis? Yeah. I'm sure that's true to a degree. Because in her mom's mind, she also can't control what's going on in there. This is what's so sick about the codependency. In Natalie's mind, like, Mackenzie needs her, 4 times a day. It's the sickest thing. I know there's going to be, I think, like 100 new jail calls coming. I don't know from what time period, but I know they're coming soon. And here's the thing, right? In not a single phone call, not one of the phone calls that I have heard, and I don't know how many were released, but there's a lot of them. At no point in time does Mackenzie ever ask her mother, "Hey, Mom, how are you? How are you doing, Mom?" Not one time. Not one time. Not once. One time, she asked what they were doing because I think she knew her grandparents were there. It was like really soon. They were like leaving the courthouse or something, wherever the trial was. They were all together leaving and they were going to eat. And she's asking where they're going. But she never says, like, "Mom, how are you? You know, what are you up to? How's work?" Like, never. But you know what she does do, and this is another thing that is so manipulative. If you listen carefully, one thing that Mackenzie does do is, "I love you, I 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 love you." Not thank you. Not thanks for fighting for me. Not, thanks for being my rock on the out. Nothing like that. Just, "I love you, I 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 love you." Now, if you're Mackenzie's very sick, codependent mother, what is it that you want to hear most of all, right? So you see how reinforcing the cycle is the other way, where Mackenzie knows that she's reinforcing her mother's out of control codependency. And when I say codependency, that's kind of it's a word that might be a little tricky for, it's a little abstract. It really just means that I need you to need me, that my whole sense of self-worth and self-concept is formulated around you needing me. So just the way that Mackenzie's being driven by a fear of being abandoned, her mother is being driven by whatever she thinks Mackenzie needs from her. It's insane. These two are so sick. But the point is, if Mom could go away and Mackenzie could have a different, strong, positive female model in her life, it's not impossible that she could get better. That's the other thing that's really, like, I don't think she is a sociopath. I think that she could be taught how to be empathic, how to really understand other people, how to even be curious about other people. Because what's blocking her ability to do that is just panic, like immediate terror. And that's really another difference between narcissism too. Like it's sad because it really is being driven by fear from Mackenzie's view. Like a real fear and a real sense of being victimized because of that, which is crazy. I know it's crazy, but so you're right, Gina. I mean, I was just thinking that actually, maybe there's some, I wouldn't say happy, I would say relieved. I would say she's relieved. Because you're right. There are boundaries around her. But earlier today, somebody was asking me, how can a mother allow their 17-year-old daughter to live with their 20-year-old boyfriend or whatever he was, 19-year-old boyfriend? Because I think for Mackenzie's parents, Dom was a little bit like what you're saying, insurance. Like he was somebody they felt that Mackenzie would be safe with because they trusted him. Not because they trusted her, but because they trusted him, which is the great irony, right? Because now they're trying to make the argument that he was trying to kill her just to get her out of prison, which is so disgusting. This man that they allowed their 17-year-old daughter to be completely and entirely in the hands of, totally dependent on, to the point where he's physically taking care of her, like buying her meals, cooking her food, buying her clothing. Like, it's just it's unbelievable. It's really disgusting. And Lazy LCH says $20. I'm behind, but my own daughter talks like her with all the likes and the bras. I don't think she could help it, but she also isn't a mean girl who would ever do that. She told me about it. In fact, yeah, no, I don't think that, just to be clear, lazy LCH, I don't think that Mackenzie's like vocabulary is problematic. You know, kids, you know, they want to be cool. They want to talk like whatever other kids that they're around. That's not inherently problematic. I think what's problematic is everything, you know, all the thoughts in Mackenzie's head and her behavior, or actually really her inability to even understand that her behavior has consequences. You know, and think about how sad that is. Think about what a sad thing. Like, what that means is that Mackenzie believes at any moment, anything could just kind of like interject itself into her world and like hurt her. You know, like something is just waiting around the corner to like grab you and like pull, you know, throw you in prison for no reason. Because if you're not responsible for anything, then there's no order. You're not in control of anything. It's a very scary way to live. And rather than her mother kind of recognizing this is the kind of anxiety that she's facilitating, fostering, and solidifying in her young child still to this very day, it's Dom's fault. It's all Dom's fault. It's just insane. It's so insane, you guys. All right, let's take one more and then we're going to take a little break. And Milligros F sends $100 in some form. Thank you, Milligros. Geez, that's really, really kind of you. It's like a constant need to protect her emotionally while avoiding confrontation. Yes, the mother reinforces the victim. Oh, yeah, 100%. She seems very aware of Mackenzie's poor frustration. Oh, yes. Yeah. She's not only aware of it, I mean, she calls it anxiety. So mom calls the inability to manage her frustration as that's her anxiety. So really, Mackenzie's tantrums, her anger, you got to see, Mackenzie has a school bus in front of her and she is losing her mind, screaming and yelling, "You motherfucker," at a school bus. Right? It's like nobody's doing, and it really feels when you watch her in this instance, like she thinks it's for her. Like this bus driver is really trying to victimize her. It's like, no, Mackenzie, this is what school buses do, right? They drop children off in front of their houses. And in order to do that, they have to drive slowly. It's insane. It's insane. Yes, so absolutely. And it's worse than just she's constantly being victimized, because it really means that I have no power ever. Like, I have no power. And it also means, you know, I'm not responsible for anything I do. So it's all just random. Like, whether or not someone just scoops you up and puts you in prison, it's like a random thing that happens. According to mom, it's because of her choice in relationship person. That's, in fact, I even think at one point Natalie says that. The worst thing you did was, like, you know, pick somebody in this family. It's shocking. And what's even crazier when you think about this, Milligros, think about this though, really. Like, she thinks that we're all going to get behind her and like rally to start a movement to get Mackenzie out of prison. That's what's even more just like unimaginable. Like, how could you think that all of us are going to look at this situation and come to the conclusion that your daughter is just an innocent snowflake who deserves to be out of prison? I mean, there's no accountability at all. She's blaming this mother actually says at one point that, I guess, I'm not sure if it's Dom's mom or Dom's stepmom. I think it's his mom, but I might be wrong. Because I heard Christine Russo say that it was her stepmother, but I'm not sure that they have the same mom. So I'm not 100% on this. You guys might know better than me. The stepmother, I guess, of Christine Russo is an attorney. And so that, in combination with the fact that the judge, their judge, her last name was also Russo. It was like a hyphenated last name. She must have married a person with the last name Russo, with no relationship to Dom's family. Okay. So there's no relationship to Dom, but in these people's like distorted version of reality, they're being framed. She actually used the word framed for this. I don't even know, by the way, how is it even possible that you could be framed for an accident that you caused? Like, what do you mean framed? It doesn't even make, there's not even anything logical about that, but mom is saying to her daughter, you are being framed. We're being set up by the Russo family because the judge has the same last name, and Dom's mom or stepmom is an attorney. It's not the evidence, by the way. Has nothing to do with the evidence. It's not that. Or the facts of the case. It's totally not that. It's like crazy. It's really crazy. It really, really is. Oh, hi, Jersey girl. What a familiar name. And she's a member for 2 months. I always feel smarter after watching your content. Thanks for the well-needed ego boost. Well, I'm so glad I could contribute to making you feel smarter. That makes me feel happy. That is what I want. I would want everyone to feel smarter. Okay, so we're going to take a 2-minute break. I'm going to feed the dog and run to the restroom. And we have a new Fervent song, which I think you guys are going to love. So let me get that queued up. I don't know how Fervent does it because, like, he's so good. He really is. Okay, hold on. Let me put this on pause. All right, here we go. Remove this. We're going to add this and...
Called you up into my office.
Make sure you
got you flowers and some chocolate.
Be back in 2.
I don't really do this often, but I think we need some talking. First off, is it Deva or Diva? I think I have liver fever. But before we take this deeper, I need to know if you're a keeper. What did you see in the salad bowl? Are you sure it's something you need to report? I got an idea, I hope you agree. How about you blame it on a false memory? When the feds came, why did you sing? You should've knew better and gave me a ring. Know this and know this only before you go and give your testimony. Officer Deva, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Don't get it twisted. This ain't a bribe, but if you tell the truth, there goes that 9 to 5. No more 6-figure salary. If you say what you saw on that Sally Port screen, I'll have your back. Unless they ask me some questions, I'll have your back. Until I throw you under the bus, I'll have your back. Let this be a lesson. I'll have your back. Really means I won't have your back. When the feds came, why did you sing? You should've knew better and gave me a ring. Know this and know this only before you go and give decide to ever do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Unfortunately, Kelly, you're the only one going down. There won't be a public records lawsuit that'll expose me or anything.
Morning, Dr. Welcher.
Good morning. We haven't been formally introduced. Your whole name?
Robert Alessi, sir.
Robert Leslie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Got so much knowledge, flow so unique, call it path harmonic. Don't get too close or this nerd will spray. I'm a walking, talking word of the day, hey. But be careful, I'm not all brains. Got a mean left hook that'll change your day. Don't even think about coming for David, or I'll put your blood in an affidavit. With my black gloves, I will legally scalp you. Got me looking like I'm about to tattoo you. In your theory, so many holes I poke. Oh, it's more bullshit than the hardcore hoax. Oh, sorry, judge, but let me elucidate before you go and take our experts away. We want the jury to hear the truth, that John didn't have a bruise. It's what you do to me. Call me a listener, baby, I'm here for the kill. Talk nerdy to me, I'll be assiduous, baby, you know the drill. It's what you do to me. Call me a listener, baby, I'm here for the kill. I'll be assiduous, baby, you know. His cross exams are more like Hell's Kitchen. He'll beat your ass if he catch you bullshitting. Talk slick to Bob and you'll have your natty swinging. Circle round your house like my name Ian Whiffen. Mr. Burgess, you're faking degrees. Have you heard of the term mendacity? He knows now. How can a witness be talking so reckless and welch to outer space with the Lexus? Once I get going, it's real hard to stop. My rhymes are sharp and they're hard as a rock. Got the iron yeti and it's fully stocked. Give me the rock, and I'll make the shot. Swish. How convenient that Google search is gone. But did you use Axiom? Probably not. Half man, half Vulcan, they calling me Spock. But let me assure you that it's just fine. Call me a listener, baby, I'm here for the kill. Talk nerdy to me, I'll be assiduous, baby, you know the drill. That's what you do to me. Call me a listener, baby, I'm here for the kill. Baby, I'll be assiduous, baby, you know the drill. Baby. I'll be assiduous, baby, you know the drill.
Ooh, there we go. I didn't mean to push the button so quick, but I did it anyway. Hi guys. Okay, we are back. Gotta love that new song by Fervent. So good. So good. If you haven't seen how he makes these songs, he did a video on it. It's so interesting. It's amazing. He does the singing himself, which I am so impressed by. At Lazy LCH sends $10. It doesn't matter what Dom did. Absolutely does not matter what Dom did. Correct. It doesn't justify her doing what she did. But what the fuck with that gibberish, though? I think her mom is suspicious. Yeah, you should. I mean, she is suspicious. Truly, I think mom has been manipulated, wouldn't even be like the right term to describe what has happened here. Her mother is so enmeshed in an unhealthy way in her daughter's emotional experience, right? I mean, you got to listen to these calls. I mean, in every single one, you walk away dumbfounded by the dynamic. And that's really what it is. Mom is constantly yelling at Mackenzie not to say anything that could jeopardize her appeal. But to me, it's the dynamic that is just so devastating to, reality. Hello? It's your dynamic that is distressing. And to your point, how does this type of gibberish, how does this happen? At what point does your daughter come to you and say, hey, Mom, I think we should practice having our own language so that we can speak poorly about other people right in front of them and they won't know? What? Right? Because think about it. What's the utility of this? I remember when my friends and I were in the 5th grade, we learned the sign language alphabet so we could do just that. My friends and I. So we didn't have to pass notes, right? So we could just sign language each other, which I don't even think we wound up doing in the end, although we did all learn it. But to do that with your mom, it's like, what is your mom doing in that moment? But we know what she's doing. That's the thing. Mom is appeasing Mackenzie. That's her whole life, is appeasing Mackenzie. It's really, it's like awe. That's why it's awe-inspiring. I don't know how else to say it, right? It's totally awe-inspiring. At Chat Signal sends $4.99. Did mom's kind of parenting start as a helicopter mom? It's a good question. Or from her own issues as a kid? I feel like I know moms like this. It's a good question. I doubt she was a helicopter mom. It's probably more because Mackenzie was difficult. Right? My guess is that her mom, her mother's anxiety started to increase as Mackenzie got older and never grew out of this kind of distressing, these tantrums. I'm sure she's always had them. And the interesting thing about Mackenzie's diagnosis, just clinically, is that we normally see this severity, these types of symptoms together because someone has had really scary parenting, right? Abuse, trauma, sexual abuse, really unstable home. So you don't get the sense that these folks are unstable or unpredictable in the way you would expect with such a severely mentally unstable child. So I think her mom just made the mistake of always trying to appease her instead of teaching her how to deal with her emotions. You're so much better served helping your children understand cause and effect, right? You're in charge. You have a say. You have free will. You can say it however you want. But it's really important that your kid learns, if I tell the teacher to screw off, it's probably not going to result in something good for me, right? I'm probably going to be negatively affected by that. My teacher's not going to like me. My teacher's not going to help me if I need help. My teacher's not going to be inclined to give me a good grade. There's all kinds of consequences, right? But it really does not feel like Mackenzie ever understood that. When you look at this child's behavior and then you listen to these texts and listen to these phone calls, she really doesn't ever get that. Ever. There's never even, and what's even more distressing, Chat Signal, whenever Mackenzie makes, there's a moment where she says, but something about the evidence, but the evidence, in other words, implying that perhaps the evidence was part of the verdict. And her mother talks her out of it. She's like, no, that's what it was. She's talking about public opinion because that really matters to Mackenzie. That's something she cares a lot about. How are people talking about me? And are people talking about me, first of all? And what are they saying? It's really important to Mackenzie. And I'm sure it's important right now. So she's asking her mom about public opinion on like a Facebook page or on the Free Mackenzie website, whatever. And her mom is saying that it's mixed, right? It's both. There's people that are supporting, and then there's people that are not. And Mackenzie's saying, well, yeah, I mean, maybe the evidence was having an impact on how people felt about her innocence or not. And mom is like, oh no, because the media manipulates all of that. So they're not looking at the evidence. They're just looking at the media manipulating things. It's like, okay. All right, mom. I don't know how you think this is helping your daughter. I mean, all you're doing is facilitating more of this. So not only is your kid going to end up in jail for 15 years, probably 20 years, because she's not going to get out right away, because she's still not taking responsibility for her behavior. So she's still not. And we're going to take a look in a minute at some of the issues she's had while she's in jail, right? Because those are interesting too, of course, because of course she's still the same person. Once she got to prison, I mean, we haven't even seen what life, we've gotten rumblings from people that have known her, were in there with her, but we don't really know what Mackenzie's life turned into in prison from a firsthand perspective, right? It'd be very interesting to hear how those phone calls evolve with mom once she got to prison. Very interesting. Because, of course, mom just, fills up her commissary and spends all this money on, shoes so that she can bedazzle other people's shoes, and she has a little hustle, whatever. Okay. Not sure how any of this is going to help your daughter, but okay. At Bella Prep for You sends $10. I know MS says she don't know what happened, but does she ever say what she thinks happened and why? She says it was a medical event. That's what she says. I'm just so curious as to her excuse away. Love to Sam and D. Nice. Yeah. So she says it was a medical event. And let's forget about the fact that if it was a medical event, if she passed out, first of all, apparently that road, from what I understand, I thought it was a straightaway, but apparently it isn't a straightaway. So in order to keep the car going straight into the wall, you would have to control the steering wheel. In other words, if she passed out, and let's say somehow, even though it's impossible, her foot continued to push down on the gas pedal, let's just say that happened somehow, the steering would have gone off course, right? Because steering wheels don't just magically steer themselves, obviously, unless that's what they're designed to do. So it's not even logical. Like, even if you tried to make this argument and take it all the way till it's like extreme nth degree, it doesn't even make sense. And the other problem that she has, Bella Brat, is that she's trying to say she doesn't remember. So she's saying both. She doesn't remember, but it was probably a medical thing. Except that she remembers everything that happened until the part where she put her foot on the gas and went straight into the wall, right? Like, she remembers leaving the house. She remembers turning slowly onto that street, which for some reason has escaped. The name of the street has escaped me right now. It begins with a P. It's not Plymouth. I'll remember later. But so she remembers turning onto that street, but then she goes blank. And then, by the way, also, she remembers, she even has some memory, it seems, of some of the discussion with first responders. And she does remember waking up and having communication with people right away that day. Right. And from what I understand, although this is a little fuzzy, the timeline is a little fuzzy. But from what I understand, she was the one that told them who was in the car. Like, she was the one that said it was Dominic and Davion were in the car. So if she's the one that said that, like, really seriously though, like, have you ever, passed out, or, when I was in college, like, I would just wake up after, like, I'd fall asleep in the middle of the day, and then I'd wake up and I wouldn't know whether it was daytime, whether I, like, had to get up and go to class. Like, I didn't know what time it was. And that would be, like, really scary. There's a moment of like, what's going on? Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? Like, where am I? What's happening? You just don't get the sense that at any time Mackenzie had that experience, right? What else do you say? And then we have her, it's on, like, she's recorded saying to her mother, I mean, think about this as evidence. Like, if you're a juror and you hear this, you have a mother speaking, or a daughter speaking to her mother in gibberish in front of the investigators saying, can't we just tell them that I had a seizure and then, or something, a seizure or something. And then she actually says out loud to that same investigator, can't you just take away my license for like 10 years or something? Like, as a juror, what are you going to do with that evidence? It's like, well, obviously, Miss Emily. Hello, Emily. Oh, everybody, don't miss tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Me and Emily are going to be breaking down statement analysis. I'm very excited for that conversation. She's been a member for 7 months. If Mackenzie walked into your office, that's a great question. Well, the problem with Mackenzie is that she doesn't believe that there's anything wrong, because her mother doesn't let her. And that's the problem, right? Like, Dom begging her, please go with me. We'll go together. Like, he was smart enough to realize that he's probably not going to get her to go to therapy, but maybe he could go with her and they could go together as like couples, right? Because he really, I think he loved her, and he wanted a chance to try to have a real relationship with her. But he knew there was no way that was going to happen because she was so severely mentally impaired. So, but, I mean, this exact person is who dialectical and behavioral therapy was made for. It's DBT. I'm sure people have heard of it. Was built for Mackenzie. Exactly. So, I'm trained in DBT. Where do you begin? You teach them how to self-regulate. That's where you begin. You begin with her learning how to calm herself down. So you start with things like awareness, right? Becoming aware of your thoughts, putting space in between you and your thinking so that it's not automatic, right? You're just like building, essentially, you have to build awareness really like 1 second at a time, right? So, because right now, the way that Mackenzie is, she's reactive. So something happens that she doesn't like you look at her the wrong way. In fact, there was I don't know if it was somebody came in from the outside while she was in jail, before she went to prison. A woman came in, and I don't remember she was like an art therapist. She came in and was doing activities with people in jail. And she made a comment to Mackenzie about her being like a good artist or something. And the way she said it upset Mackenzie. And she could not let it go. She just ruminated on it. And her mother kept trying to be like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, any way that mom could to try to like get Mackenzie to drop it. And she just couldn't. So that's like an example where you would try to say, build some space between a thought and your like emotional responses to it. Helping her to see that she has choices. Like, it's a choice to react. Doesn't feel like a choice because it's a choice you make in a split second, but it's a choice to keep thinking about something that you don't like. It's a choice to continue to foster and facilitate and fuel how mad you are that this woman said something you didn't like, to a point, until you get to a certain level of emotional intensity, and then it's not a choice. But right, just really ultimately with Mackenzie, you're teaching her how to have choices and how to deal with her emotions, because she's so dysregulated. And that's the thing about it, Emily. Like, today, in the world we live in now, there are really effective treatments for Mackenzie, specifically for somebody like Mackenzie. Here's the problem with a Mackenzie. You're never going to get very far with her as long as mom is in the picture, because her mother will be there at every turn to undermine all the progress she makes and undo any positive progress will be undone by her mother. This is the problem. That's why I was saying, if she could find somebody like a positive female in prison that could help, build some of this naturally, organically, because there are people that, not commonly, that have mental health challenges and then learn like the tools kind of organically or naturally. You see that with substance use disorders. It's called a natural recovery. Life kind of kicks your ass and you sort of learn how to deal without substances. Doubtful that's going to happen here, because mom isn't allowing for her to move on. She's not allowing it. I mean, that's such a big part of her illness is her mother. It's so unmet. It's really, really bad. It's like 4 times a day, mom drops everything to pick up the phone and have these like, I don't know, absurd, appeasing, placating conversations like she's talking to a 7-year-old. It's really quite something. Yay, we have a new member. Welcome at JDT Character Girl. Character? I think that's what that says. JDT Character Girl, welcome. Don't forget, check out membership portal stuff. That's what I would do, Emily. I would be like, go immediately to the course in the membership portal called the Healing, Growth, and Change course, and start right now. That's what I'd be saying to Mackenzie. At Melinda, is this real life? That's funny, Melinda. Sends $4.99. I can't even imagine. I know what Mackenzie's little sister's going through. It's incredibly sad that this is her normal everyday life. I know. So it's interesting. I wonder a lot about her sister's name is Danny. At first I thought it was a boy because of the name, right? But she has a younger sister. Yeah, I mean, maybe I will say this. It's possible that what might seem unfair to Danny today, that her big sister is Mackenzie, in actuality, it may save her, because all of mom's codependent efforts and needs are all going to get sort of like, by default, because they have to, because Mackenzie is so, guys, if you want a sense of how unimaginably needy Mackenzie is, like 2 minutes of these text messages between Dom and Mackenzie, it physically causes pain, because you start to see instantly the level of like hostage taking is the way that I frame it. But it's like, he literally goes to the bathroom and she's like, where are you? Why aren't you answering me? And it's, and he will say to her, I was taking a shit. Like, he will say that, right? Or he'll say like, you've got to stop. Like, you are oppressive. And she just, well, then break up with me then. And he's like, will you stop threatening me? Like, you can see over and over that Dom is naming what she's doing. He's literally naming it. And rather than her listening, taking a second to hear what he's saying, it's attack, defend, deflect, and then threaten. It is constant. Like, you really have to give, I don't want to say credit, because maybe that's not the right word. In a way, he facilitated it just like mom did because he allowed it to continue. And that's why I believe he probably was seriously contemplating going into the military. I've seen people kind of laugh at that, like, no way, he was such a stoner. There's no way that he would ever have done that. I wonder if he didn't start talking about that because he saw it as a way away from Mackenzie. Like, I'm sure this man felt really stuck because he knew that if he tried to seriously distance himself, she was going to do exactly what she did, drive herself into a wall. I mean, he really knew that she was very, very unstable. And you can see it in every text conversation they had. It's wild to watch. Really, really wild. At Lazy LCH sends $10. What do you recommend for parents of high anxiety kids? I have one, but she isn't crazy. It would never do what Mackenzie did. But everything bothers her, and it has now turned into OCD. It's a really good question. So I'm trying to think about the best way to say it. The best thing there's a lot of things, first of all, but it's so cliche. I know it is, but if you can help your kid, like the best way to do it for a child, for example, if I were talking to an adult, I'd be saying things like, yoga, activities where you're, sports, athletics, activities where you're moving, and in that movement, you're required to learn how to bring your awareness to the present moment. That's what it really all comes down to. That's what it's all about. When you're dealing with anxiety, and it's hard because kids, they're still developing and they don't have the experience of life to sort of draw from. Their brains are not fully developed. So it's hard for them to trust. Their emotions are actually felt more intensely than an adult, a fully, mature adult, because their frontal cortex is not fully developed. So they don't have that part of their brain to say, it's going to be okay. Just hang in there. One more day, So they're much more prone to worry about everything. And then, of course, right, you might use OCD as a form of a way to try to control, oddly, because if I'm more in control, then I feel a little better. But the truth is that we really, they really are in control far more than they realize. And that's kind of the great irony, right? So I would say the best thing you could do, it's so cliche and I hate even saying it, but is really helping children, adults, everyone learn the best way to find the present moment and understand what it means to stay there. So whether that's mindfulness, meditation, movement, mindful movement is what I would say. That's really what it all comes down to for everybody, all shapes, colors, sizes, ages. And it's a skill because the culture that we live in, we're not taught. We're not taught. We are prone to immediately start worrying about the past or worrying about the future or replaying the past. And it takes a long time to unlearn that. But that is really the exit strategy, is recognizing that that's what's happening, that my brain is automatically jumping into the future, playing out future scenarios, or replaying past events, right? Like, why didn't this go the way I wanted? Or what does this person think after I said this, this, and this, all of that. So it really is about learning how to bring your attention at will to where you are, and then just taking it kind of like one step at a time, like I said, as cliche as it sounds. So the best way, though, that children learn, this is why I was saying it this way, children learn by usually combining movement with mental exercise. So if you have a child who's athletic at all, those are the kids that learn this stuff inherently, because if you're being coached by a really, really solid coach, they're going to teach you all of these things in your athletic training. That's one of the really enormous benefits of athletics in high school and adolescence. So that is what I would say, right? Teaching your kids any way that they're interested or willing to find the present and learn how to calm themselves down by using the present moment is really the answer. There's a million ways to do it, and how you do it really depends on your situation, your kid, and their willingness, right? Their willingness. At Mommy in NY, hi, Mommy in NY, 12564 is a member for a month. I am a parent of a young girl, now adult, that had anxiety, self-harm, drove erratic, and scared me every single day. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And then there are like varying degrees to this, right? So, and there's really solid help. That's the thing. There's really solid help. So that's sort of the tragedy, like even with Mackenzie. Now, Mackenzie was so extremely dysregulated and so angry that she just did not have there were no boundaries set up in her life. So there was no willingness, right? And if your family, if your mom never allows you to experience consequences, well, then what is the incentive to try something different? You're just going to keep like pushing your will forward, right? That's why consequences are positive. That's how they're helpful. Consequences showing you that you are responsible for what happens to you. So the more that we shield them, and of course, like as a parent, we all want to save our kids. We want to protect them. We don't want them to have to experience negative consequences. That's like the last thing we want, right? We don't want them to feel pain. But that's the problem. Pain is how human beings learn, period. We don't learn from textbooks. We don't learn from somebody else telling us what to do. We learn from pain. And if you try to shield your child from any pain and suffering, then there's never going to be any motivation to learn to change. It's just, unfortunately, the reality of the world that we're in. And it takes what it takes. Some of us, myself included, had to learn later, had to be, had to get that will beat out of them a little bit. And it takes what it takes. It really does. At Ms. Holmes, hi, Ms. Holmes, this is a member for 10 months. Sam, I need your skincare recipe, please. Somebody else was asking me about this. What did I tell them? I don't think so. Like, I will post it if you want in the notes. Like the stuff I use, I don't think it's that it's not expensive. It's like super not. I think it's really like, they it's such a stupid thing. Like they put me on these like birth control pills, these like estrogen pills, and I really think that's what made my skin better. It's so simple. It's like a very low dose. But I just wasn't taking anything like that for many years. And I really think that it like made my skin better. So, but I will give you what my skincare regimen is without a doubt, of course. No problem. At Mommy 12564 sends $9.99. This family, so lost. They want to save this kid so badly. Mom has been waiting for these cries for help, but they are all tactics. I know. And this is the thing, is like I was saying, pain is the way that we learn. If you shield your child from ever experiencing pain, they will not learn. And then not only will they not learn, they're going to learn the opposite. They're going to learn that, and it drives me insane. Like when I hear Natalie instilling the notion that God, actually using the name of God as like Mackenzie is just going to get saved by God. God is just going to save Mackenzie. Like, Mackenzie just has to keep praying, and then God is going to like physically pick her up and bring her out of prison. It's like, no. This is like the worst message to send anyone ever, because what do we learn? Like, what's the first thing you learn in any faith, class, right? Like, faith without works is dead. You got to be, you got to go halfway. You got to do your part. You got to take responsibility for you. You got to show up. Then, if you believe in a God of any particular kind, or if you have faith, then, right, that's where but you got to show up. You're not a feather in the wind. But the way that Mom and Mackenzie talk about God is as though, like, all us humans are just kind of like feathers with predetermined destiny. And then when God like blows the wind, whichever way God wants, us, helpless feathers just get blown in a direction, and we have to just deal with it. Well, that's really a distortion of the way things are. And that's a terrible lesson to teach a child, because then what happens when she doesn't get her way? I can just keep praying, Mom. I keep praying. Well, if you're not teaching personal responsibility, but you're teaching heavily leaning on this God's going to come and save you, well, now you're just teaching someone to be helpless and angry, because you were told that God was going to come and fix everything, and they didn't. It's so painful to watch. And I agree with you. You can feel the desperation in Natalie, and that's what makes this whole thing even worse. She's so desperate. And I think they're very well-intended people. Like, I do. I think that her father and her mother, I think they're well-meaning. They obviously love their daughter, but it's so misguided. Like, they're just moving so painfully in the wrong direction with this kid, and they needed help. At one point, Dom's older brother, inserts himself into Mackenzie's life, is talking to her mother, and is saying, he's like a psychology minor or something in college. And so he he likes this stuff. So he's talking to Mackenzie, and he's talking to Mackenzie's mom about her mental health problems. And he's trying to be helpful to Mackenzie, and he eventually gets really frustrated because, quote, she doesn't listen. Well, of course she doesn't listen. She doesn't listen to anybody, right? Her own voice drowns out any other human except for Mom. And that's exactly how Mom kind of set it up, right? It's so sad. It's really, really sad. It's really sad. And, when you're a mom who's this entangled with your child's emotions, what ends up happening is there's this small part of you that almost doesn't really want them to emancipate. Like, you don't really want them to move on, because if they do, then they don't need you anymore. And then where are you? Your whole life has become about saving them. So this whole dynamic, you guys, is fucked. It is so screwed. It really, really is. At CC Headband Cupcake Law Nerd. Hi, CC. Member for 7 months. Congrats on almost 60,000 subs, Sam. Much deserved. Hit that subscribe button, everyone. It's free. This channel has no quit. Sam is the best. Oh, thank you so much, CC. I know, I can't even believe it. It's very surreal. Thank you so much. That's right, everybody. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe right now. We're very close. I don't know if we're there, but we're very, very close. Thanks, CC. I so appreciate you. You are the best, the very best. And you guys, I have been getting better. I am learning how to check my email every day. It's this crazy concept. It's called check your email every day. And I've been doing it. I'm on day 3. I know It's just a start. I'm one day at a time, but that's 3 days. That's a big change. At CC007 sends 199. Sam, do you think the parents can be changed? I think you're asking. It's much harder for that to happen. Anybody can change who's really motivated to do it. But like I was saying, most people, no matter their age, they're only motivated when the pain is so extreme and almost any other path forward is slammed shut, right? Then you'll see motivation. But the level of motivation that a real change, the kind that would be necessary here, warrants is really high. That's why you don't see it very often, right? People do change, but lots of people don't think that's true. And the reason they don't think that's true is because of the amount of effort it requires. And that's biology, right? We are biologically set up to be efficient, and change is the most energy exhaustive thing on the planet. Think about like weight loss. Think about how hard it is. Change your diet and exercise, how hard it is to make that new behavior a permanent fixture in your life. It's very, very difficult. It takes like conscious effort and struggle. And it's that effort. It's that the amount of effort that it requires to make that kind of change. And that's an easy change in comparison to what we're talking about, because psychological change requires many layers. It's not just changing a behavior, right? You actually have to also be mindful of your thinking. And that means really slowing down, really having to become aware of what's going on in your mind. And for most people, unless you have to do it, you have to because you think it's life and death, you're facing some extraordinary consequence, or you're in so much pain, psychic pain, emotional pain. You don't want to live in pain anymore, right? That's why, people do change. In fact, I've seen extraordinary change very quickly. You'd be surprised how quickly people can change. It's extraordinary, but it requires a full-scale effort for a consistent period of time. And the more people that are required to be a part of that change, the less likely it is to happen. So, for example, if I'm married and I'm in a dysfunctional, or it doesn't have to be a marriage, it can just be like a spouse. But if I've been in a long-term relationship that's dysfunctional and we want to change that relationship, it is not an easy thing to do. I mean, it requires both parties to be fully committed to the change effort. And at any point, if one is and one isn't, then we have just gone back into the old pattern, right? So that's why you don't see a lot of success. You see some, but most of the time, couples wait too long to get help, to go into a therapy situation. And so by then, a lot of the damage is already done, because it's really hard to change. It's really, really hard to change. And it's very hard to change relationships. And without a doubt, by the way, the most difficult relationship to change is probably the one you have with a parent, because it's been going on for your whole life, right? It's automatic. It comes out instantly the second you lay eyes on them. So it would be extraordinarily difficult for her parents to change. Now, like I said, could they? Yeah, they could. But it will not be easy to do. And they'd have to really understand, like Natalie would have to really understand the benefit in doing that. She'd have to understand and trust that her daughter's not going to hurt herself if she takes a step back. And that's the problem. Natalie doesn't believe that, especially not after the accident. So it's insane, I know. At Cajun Zone became a member. Welcome, Cajun Zone. I like the name Cajun, or at least the word Cajun. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Lazy LCH sends $10. No childhood trauma. Yeah. This is purely created from TikTok. Yeah, it's wild, right? Well, I think TikTok probably, I'm guessing about this, probably came already after, because this kind of stuff, you're probably going to see the first signs of like major disruption, emotional disruption. It's probably going to come like 8, 9, right? 8, 9, 10 is probably when you're going to start to see like the big emotional outbursts. And if you just keep reinforcing, right? You just keep reinforcing them. And of course, once adolescence, right? So once pre-teenage, that's when this is gonna, like, the shit probably truly hit the fan from 8th grade going into 9th. That's the tipping point typically for adolescent females. That's where they really lose their mind because of a combination of transitions from 8th to 9th grade. So that's a big transition. Hormones, right? And then like the level of expectations, just you're kind of right. High school is another level of stepping towards adulthood. So you have all of this happening at that time. That's got to be the time where Mackenzie probably like truly started to evidence serious issues. But it was already happening before that, because in middle school was when she was first introduced to antidepressants. And, you know, that's not something that parents do lightly. Like, most parents do not want to put their 7th grader on Prozac, right? And they only do that or consider that if they absolutely have to. They absolutely have to. So for the Shirilla family to be already cycling through various psychiatric medications by middle school, you know, it tells you that the problem was well established probably before she, you know, started with social media. It's crazy. At Balancing Debits and Credits sends $10. But for the grace of God, there go I. I cannot imagine being in this position. But as a parent, I cannot make sense of anything these parents are doing. Absolutely. It just needs to stop. I completely agree with you. And yeah, I mean, look, I've also seen it where, like, you know, I have a particular couple in mind. It doesn't happen a lot. Most of the time, because I've worked with adolescents and young adults my whole career for the most part. And almost always, like on visiting day, when the parents would come into treatment, you'd always know like whose parents belong to who, you know, not just because of the way they looked, but because of the way they acted. Like, it was always very clear that like apples don't fall far. But having said that, there are the occasions when you'll meet like the nicest, most well-adjusted, amazing couple, and their offspring is just like a monster, a maniac, you know, crazy, like completely different in every way, shape, and form from them, you know, and it's like, why did this happen? You know, I don't know. So it very well could be that, you know, she just was kind of hell-bent and needed a lot of help, and they didn't get it to her. They just didn't. Look, this is the bottom line. If I had to put into words the worst thing that these guys have done, they normalized her behavior. They normalized the crazy, insane. They normalized what mom calls her mouth. The worst thing about her is her mouth, which she can't even say, you know, with a straight face. But they normalized that. They thought it was funny. They laugh about it. And I mean, there's just simply nothing funny about it. It's not funny in any way, shape, or form, right? It's not funny that your child, you know, she leaves the house to go to school, and within 10 minutes, you know, she's getting into fights with your neighbor because she's, you know, flying past the stop sign at 30 miles per hour right down the street from the house. and it's not funny, right? It's horrible. So the worst thing they did was say, she's fine. There's nothing wrong. Worst thing she did, because everybody knew something was wrong. Everybody, anybody that the police officers in this case spoke to, anybody, everyone knew something was wrong. I mean, her friend Rosie, like that good friend, her best friend Rosie, who wouldn't talk to the police. Yeah. Her best friend Rosie is telling some of their other friends, whatever you do, don't get in the car with Mackenzie. Don't get in her car because she's like the worst driver ever. Right? She's a reckless, terrible driver. Even after the accident, she's making fun of Rosie for going, 35 miles an hour in a 35 miles an hour speed zone after the accident. So the worst thing that these people did was just like make it okay that she was this out of control, maniac, just mouthing off, getting into these extreme fights. You heard her father. Remember when he was on the Netflix documentary saying that something happened at school and he showed up and her daughter was crying in the office and he looked at her and he said, did you do it? And she said, no. And then he's like, that's good enough for me. And he walked her out of the building. That pretty much by itself sums up what the problem is. You cannot teach your child that there are no consequences for their out of control behavior. The more that you normalize that, what the hell do you think is going to happen? Especially a child like Mackenzie, who, let's be honest, what was she doing in school once she got to high school? You listen to the way that her friends describe her from the time she was in 9th and 10th grade. Mackenzie's not studying for tests. Mackenzie's not doing anything besides smoking weed and chasing boys and creating bitch lists, bullying girls in her class that she doesn't like. And this is what Mackenzie's spending her time doing from the time she's, how old are you in high school? 14? 13, 14? It's what do you do? Right? I mean, you got to get help. You got to get help and you have to set a boundary. You have to set a boundary. But, I think so what I'm learning about Mackenzie's father, and I think I forgot to mention this, he's like a little bit anti-authority himself, right? Like he's kind of like big F you to the man kind of a guy. So you have this combination of like this extremely enabling, codependent woman who just makes excuse after excuse for her daughter's total out of control behavior. And then her dad, who's kind of aggressive, aggro, and anti-authority. You have kind of this combination that's just, a nightmare. You can't match aggression with aggression and expect to get anywhere positive, right? Like dad wasn't going to out aggressive, Mackenzie. You're not going to fight it out with her and win. That's just going to escalate the behavior, right? So what a disaster. Got a Bad Feeling sends $9.99. Samantha, thank you for another live. We always learn so much from you. Appreciate you more than you know. Love you. Love you too. Got a Bad Feeling. Thank you so much for being here. You are truly the best. I get so excited when I see you. I'm like, oh, yay. It's true. At Lazy LCH sends $10. I worry that my kids' OCD is because of my Gen X childhood. I was raised by wolves, but turned out okay because there was no social media. So I do what my parents did, and now my kid is anxious. Well, it's very hard to not feel anxious in the world we live in today. And what I would say is, what is the anxiety about, right? So we use that term as a general way to mean worry. And so I would want to know more about the nature of those worries, right? Is it generalized anxiety, like just worries about everything? Is it specific to grades, future, what's going to happen? We're speaking broadly. There's sort of two ways to handle it, right? One is skill oriented, like, teaching people, what do I do when I feel overwhelmed? What do I do when I feel inherently anxious? But what I have noticed in the generations now, younger generations, is there's almost like an existential dread that they have. And it's probably a combination of things, right? Definitely social media is a facilitator, information, the flow of constant information is a facilitator. But it's like this feeling of, I don't know like who I am or what to do with myself. And that can bring a tremendous amount of anxiety. So it depends on the circumstances too. Like I would want to know, what is the nature of the specific anxiety that they're experiencing? And then, try to help target whatever's underneath that. But, it's funny, right? Like I said, pain is a great teacher and it's a great motivator. So just because there's anxiety doesn't mean that it's bad. I had friends growing up that, when we were very young, my friends and I were actually very similar to Mackenzie. Truthfully, a lot of my friends and I, we just did not really have much oversight. And at the time, that was a wonderful thing and made me very happy. And I would not change that for the world. I am very happy with parents that I was blessed with. So I'm not complaining at all, but I had a lot of freedom. And I remember when we got a little older, I had friends that would say things like, "Oh, I'm so glad that I never got into drugs and I only ever drank alcohol." And I remember always thinking, well, I don't know that that's such a great trade-off, because my friends that had very serious substance use problems with drugs, they had to make a choice. By the time they're 24 years old, you're either going to get over it, you're like moving on from substance use as an activity, or it's probably going to ruin your life. So you have to make a choice. Right? And because alcohol is a drug, it gets lumped in with the drugs in order to overcome it. My friends that didn't have drugs a part of the mix could get away with substance abuse for a lifetime by leaving out the drugs. So my point is that pain is sometimes a very positive thing. All of the clients that I had as young people, young adolescents and young adults, by the time we went through treatment together, on the other side of it, we would all be talking like, my mental health challenge was like a great gift, because if I didn't have this, I wouldn't have the tools that I have. I wouldn't have the life skills that I have. I wouldn't know what I know now. I wouldn't have the wisdom that I now have to go through my whole life with. And I'm 22 years old. So, sometimes that kind of pain, it's horrible. It's scary. It's terrible to have to navigate. But if it's bad enough, it's motivating, and that motivation can be the greatest gift you'll ever get. Because if you can be motivated to make a change as a young person, you really are set up in a way that other people are not. And other people, you can get away with, like, you can get by, right? But that's not, is that what you want? Is that what your kid wants? Probably not, right? They're probably not just looking to get by. Like they want to do something positive. They want to be able to kind of live a big life, right? Live a good life. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, even though it's scary as a parent. However, you really want to say to them, what is their level of motivation to do something different? Because, if you can change that and learn how now, that anxiety becomes a tremendous gift, as crazy as that sounds. Right? You know what I'm saying? Hopefully that made sense. Hi, Songbits Laura. She's been a member for 10 months. It feels like a trauma bond also. Well, I don't know which one you mean. I'm not sure who you mean. I don't know if you mean Dom and Mackenzie, because that's certainly an interesting idea. I'm not sure who you mean, or Mom and Mackenzie. I mean, now they're probably trauma bonded because of the prison. But Mackenzie, I don't. Mackenzie's the kind of person where if she doesn't need you, she's not going to like think of you. Do you know what I'm saying? And right now, obviously, she needs her mom. I mean, her mom, is her Venmo. Her mom is her right arm. But if she had somebody else supplementing, right? Then my guess is that she could just transfer that bond to somebody else. Yeah, that's my guess. I don't think it's for her, for Mackenzie, not for Mom, but for Mackenzie. I don't think it necessarily is person specific, if that makes sense. I know that sounds crazy, but I think that's probably the case based on her personality disorder. At Fiona Houston 2140 sends $10. With parents like these, who needs to learn accountability, right? It kind of feels that way. But the only problem is then you end up in prison for murder, and she'll end up there again. How many times do I have to learn the same lesson before eventually it's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't do this stupid shit anymore. It's like people are nuts. They really I don't know. We can endure a lot before we kind of wake up and smell the coffee. It reminds me before I want to make sure and get this in. So I want you guys to see this. I can't give credit because I thought that I had screenshot the original post with the person who made this post, but I didn't. And then when I went back to X, I couldn't find it. So I apologize for not giving you the proper credit, person who made this. Whatever we want to call this image of Mackenzie. These are the prison violations that she has picked up in her time in prison so far. So we're not going to have a ton of time to go through this play by play tonight, but I want to make you aware of it. And if you go down
any piece of plastic lens.
Sorry, guys. That's something else. If you go down to the August 1st, 2025 violation, it is consensual sexual conduct. So there are definitely a few on here, maybe only a small handful. Sexual harassment is on here. A lot of these violations are called being out of place. So my guess is, right, she's, walking the corridors or, in somebody else's, I'm not sure how it's referenced necessarily in prison, but, in somebody else's cell or on somebody else's floor or whatever. Let me see. Disturbance of a direct order, possession of contraband, including altered contraband. We have another possession of contraband, encouraging or creating a disturbance. So that one certainly sounds like Mackenzie. Some kind of basic violation of rules. So you can see that May 16th, 2024, being out of place, stealing or embezzlement of property, possession of contraband, possession of another incarcerated person's, possession of property of another incarcerated person, possession of contraband, disturbance of a direct order, being out of place, being out of place, being out of place, being out of place. So these are interesting to take a look at. We don't know what she's had added since August of 2025, but it's certainly interesting. I mean, of course, Mackenzie's going to get herself into trouble. I want to say that she's probably smart enough to not get herself into too much trouble, but with somebody like this, I'll tell you what it's going to come down to. It's all going to come down to who she winds up putting herself around, who she's around, who her influences are. if she winds up finding people who have her best interest at heart, who she looks up to, who she admires, then it's very possible that, she kind of straightens herself out a little bit. But what do you think? If you're someone who has your shit together, first off, you're probably not there to begin with. So there's that. And second, is she going to be interested enough in you to, get to the point where you're even around her because of the person that she is, right? So, like I said, there's a chance. Listen, Mackenzie is not lost to the ability to make a change. Neither is her mother, but it is so unlikely given the circumstances. It is just so unlikely. So unlikely. At the V Girl sends $4.99. Please wish my daughter Megan Klug a very happy birthday. Oh, very, very happy birthday to you, Megan Klug. What's today's date? Today is May 27th. Oh, that's a nice birthday, nice spring birthday. Happy birthday to you, Megan. Bella Brat sends $5, says, do you think there's any hope that mom might actually get therapy too? I wouldn't be surprised if mom has had a therapist. She seems like the kind of person who might actually like talking to somebody. But the problem is, push comes to shove, and you can't tell her what to do. You can't tell her how to raise her daughter. And that's her big, even if she was listening to us right now, her defense would be, we don't know her, we don't understand. Oh, we don't know the circumstances in their household, and we don't know the decisions that she made or what she was motivated by, and we don't understand who Mackenzie is, and that's going to be the defense. Of course, right? Of course. You think about it, because this is the other side of it, right? Like, and parents do this. Parents either take no responsibility whatsoever. Like, they look at their child and they're like, you are an alien. I have no idea what basic principles you are operating from. I don't get it. Not in like a mean way, but just like they're an alien. I had no influence. So some parents do not understand that they have had influence in their child's lives because they don't feel like they've had influence. It feels to them like their kid was just born the way they are. They've been that way their whole life. And you are just kind of a spectator who like kind of guides their behavior along the way, right? And it's not meant to be like malicious or to not take responsibility. Just to that person doesn't feel like they've had any real great influence. And that makes sense because, to your children, they are pretty consistent as far as your view is concerned. You don't see them in all these other contexts. So they show up the same way in front of you, right? Over and over again. And so it may not feel like you're having any influence at all, or influential at all. Then there are the parents that take full responsibility for everything their kid is doing. So if their kid is a serial killer, the first thing on their mind is, what did I do wrong? Right? And of course, it's somewhere in the middle. Like, no one's 100% responsible for their child's behavior, and no one's not responsible at all, right? Of course, they have had an influence, but it's not all their fault one way or the other, for better or for worse. And in this case, it's interesting because even though I don't think she would ever admit this to anybody ever, it feels like she is trying to take responsibility for Mackenzie, right? Like, she is in her way trying to like do it for her. That's the best way to say it. Do it for her. Yeah. So I don't know. Chat Signal sends $9.99. Initially, I don't want to indulge in this case, but after your analysis, it's so helpful to learn how this can happen. truly great lessons for young parents with kids. They aren't our friends. No. I'm glad you said that, chat signal. So here's the thing, guys. So we didn't talk a lot tonight about Mackenzie's substance abuse, but of course, for someone who's borderline personality disordered, substance abuse is attractive because it's it's a way to regulate how they feel. Take a hit of weed, take a shot of tequila, and I'm going to temporarily alter my mood and feel better. Also feel more in control, right, of myself. But permissive parenting is by far the most highly occurring style of parenting amongst those with addiction and mental health challenges, right? So if you were in rehab right now and you took a poll of how everyone in that, treatment facilities parents behaved with them, the majority of the folks in that program or at that facility are going to tell you that their parents were permissive. They were their friends. And I'm not blaming parents. Believe me, I'm not saying it's causal. I'm not saying permissive parenting causes X, Y, or Z, but it is a common denominator amongst those who have that problem, right? And again, we understand where mom came from here because, again, remember, safety is what she thinks is her number one job. You know what I'm saying? So if you think that, keeping your child from hurting herself is your number one job, and you have Mackenzie for a daughter, you're going to be very, very worried, very stressed, very busy bee, and you're going to give her anything and do anything, including buying her drugs and alcohol to try to calm her down. And really, next time you have a free moment, take a moment to listen to their calls, and you're going to hear this dynamic the whole way through. Mackenzie starts to get upset. She starts to get mad, and she'll immediately start complaining about how someone pissed her off, and I'm about to blah, blah, blah. And she's like, immediately, Mackenzie jumps to threatening. It's like, this person pissed me off, and I'm about to blah, 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 right? In every conversation, you'll hear a version of it. And then mom tries to talk her out of it. And it's just like part of how they talk every time. It's insane. It's really insane. At Fiona Houston, 2140 sends $10. Worked for Autism Australia. We used more processing time for anxiety in clients, mostly nonverbal with behaviors of concern. Yeah. So, well, the autism is a completely different animal. And you're right. Completely different animal in terms of how you might intervene or use interventions, because also somebody with autism, neurodivergence, their just brain is wired a little bit differently. So, start to finish, you're obviously, as you are very well aware, have to be mindful of what those differences are. But that's why I'm saying it does matter. Like, it's not a one size fits all situation. It really does depend on what the facilitator of that anxiety is. A lot of my autism folks, it's about certainty, like a desire to want control and understanding. And so that could be very different from, somebody else who's worrying all the time about not getting good grades, right? I mean, it depends on what the circumstances are. It really always does. But I appreciate that. Yes. So in that case, using more processing time for anxiety. Yeah. And clients mostly nonverbal with behaviors of concern. And, sometimes just attention too, like being with somebody and asking them, how are you? What's going on? Having somebody who will be with you and listen that you feel safe with is a huge de-escalator for people. And it's a shame because somebody like Mackenzie really could have benefited from that. She probably would have done really well with it for at least a period of time until that person told her something she didn't like. Then it would have changed. But At CC007 sends $4.99. Sam, I'm wondering with all that has come out, especially with the documentary, do you think the parents can be held liable? Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm not sure for what in this case, because Mackenzie was older, right? I mean, she was 17 years old. So I don't, maybe civilly, like if she came from this extraordinarily wealthy family and you wanted to, take them to court in a civil suit, I could maybe see that. I'm not sure, I don't think that would happen in this case, but I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so you'd have to really ask somebody who has a lot more knowledge of the law than I do, but I don't see how that would work. It doesn't mean that it's not possible though. I just don't see how. You have to remember too, Cece, that, like I was listening to the lawyer, talk about this from a legal perspective versus a clinical perspective. It gets complicated because if you have a legal mind looking at this case, they're not looking at it from a clinical perspective. Of course, that's not their expertise, it's not their training. Then if you have a clinical person looking at this case, it's a completely different animal. And so you really need the two things to be together working on this on either side, right? Whether you're on the side of supporting Mackenzie or not, right? Supporting the prosecution and, really trying to continue to keep the status quo the way it is. You kind of have to work together on this because you're not going to see it. That's what I'm learning. Like just talking to people generally about this case, they just don't see it. They don't know that she has a borderline personality. They don't know what that means. They don't know how that's affecting her now. They don't understand how her parents are, have had a true hand in facilitating that illness. And it's true, essentially watering it and fueling it to develop in its worst form. Right. So that's part of the problem. At Lazy LCH sends $2. COVID really effed my daughter up. Yeah, I saw that for a while. Just my clients, I'm not sure how old your daughter is, but that's tough just with like the social anxieties, I'm guessing. Yeah, I mean, it really did. It really affected so many young people. That's who really took the hit, right? The worst was all the young people. Hello, Sissy. It's my sister. Hi, Jackie. Member for 6 months. Hi, sis and crew. Wish I could have stopped to chat about this crash case. I'll stop by soon. Let's get Christine Russo on. You guys are the best. Thanks, sister. I'm working on it. Yeah, she's awesome. I really want to get her on. And my sister was the one that, told me or asked me, reminded me. She knew the doc was coming, and she's like, you got to take a deep dive into this case. And so that is what I did. So it is because of you, Sissy, that I looked at this case at all. So thank you. Thanks, sister. It is a really interesting case. And just she can tell you this too, that my knee jerk on this case was that if it's true that she wasn't taking marijuana on that day in that 24 hours, that marijuana withdrawal would be an absolute accelerant to this problem, without a doubt. I mean, it was my very first instinct, given what I understood to be true about her at that time. And I still think that's without a doubt part of it. At the Ellen Train 4775 sends $1.99. Hi, I adore you. I adore you too. What do you make of Kay hypersexuality? So she's not, this is really interesting, you guys. And it's funny you bring this up, because we're kind of towards the end of the show, but here's something interesting. Mackenzie does not like sex, does not want to have sex all the time, really pushes back on routine sexual interaction with Dom. And it doesn't surprise me at all. Not even a little bit. because number one, of her age, right? It is truly remarkable, because when we look at a kid like that, and you see the way that she's putting herself out there on TikTok, of course, your first assumption, for all of us, is going to be that she's really hypersexual. But then when I thought about it, this came from her texts. Well, no, it's also in some of the phone calls with friends. It comes out as you peel back the layers in this case. And I remember at first, when I first heard it, thinking, oh, that's interesting. But then when I thought about it for more than 2 seconds, I was like, oh, of course. You know, she's a little girl. She's 16, 17 years old. She's a kid, right? So she's just so deeply insecure. So deeply insecure that even when, and she would use sex in a really abusive way with Dom, you know, the moment that he tried to hold her accountable, so like the moment that he would say to her, you know, you're treating me horribly, like you're being abusive towards me. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but anything where he tried to hold her feet to the fire and say, you're not even like, you don't listen to me at all. You don't seem to care truly. She would be like, why? Because I won't, you know, suck your dick, blah, blah, blah. You know, she just would make it sound like it was abusive on his end, right? Like he was being manipulative sexually, when it was more than obvious that there was not a conversation, there was no discussion about sex happening. He was trying to be heartfelt in his approach, asking her, you know, for help, not to get help necessarily for herself even, but to help him in the relationship, because Dom seemed to want it to work. Like he really seemed like he loved her, he cared about her, and he wanted to be able to be with her. And he was trying to speak heart to heart to her, and she just couldn't tolerate it, right? Because think of it this way, the closer that something is to the truth, the more scary it's going to be for somebody like Mackenzie, who's never had any accountability, never had to take responsibility for anything she says or does. And I really want to underline anything, because she doesn't take responsibility for anything. It's crazy. Nothing. It's just, it's intense. I mean, it's a lot. Like when you really get in there and you listen, it's like, this is insane. This is so crazy. It's like, it's an extreme crazy. So it's funny because to me, what all of that, like, you know, kissy faces, half naked images on TikTok, it's all about wanting to be liked. I mean, as sad as that is, it's all about like wanting people overtly to like her, to fawn on her, right? Like she would say to Dom, you know, people send me marriage proposals on TikTok. Like, I'm a wanted woman. Like, you better be nice to me or I'm going to leave you for, you know, whatever. Famous people on TikTok or follow my posts or whatever nonsense. And then 2 minutes later, she would start talking about how she hates herself. And, you know, it was always about attention. And this is somebody who's pretty black and white in her thinking. So she doesn't understand nuance. That's why it's so over the top. That's why it seems so hypersexual, because it seems like, you know, look at this kid in like a, you know, half shirt and like underwear posing on TikTok. For us, that seems like somebody, you know, being very sexual. In reality, it's in her mind. That's like what you have to do to get attention. It's crazy. It's, you know, it's interesting. It's also interesting, like her friend Rosie, just as like a comparison, she does do some of that, but she also doesn't do some of that. And it's interesting to kind of compare, because I think Rosie's actually an influencer. She actually has, I think, quite a big following. I'm not sure if it's on TikTok or Instagram. I don't know. But I think she has been somewhat successful at it. And they're very different flavors. And that speaks to their character, personality, right? One of them understands the nuance of how to engage with other humans, and the other doesn't. So it's just extreme, right? It's like Chanel in like a half shirt with a giant blunt, because that's what you have to do to like get attention, not because that's who she is, not because, you know, she's really a sexual person. It's exactly the opposite with Mackenzie. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. All right, you guys, we made it. Oh my God, we made it. Woohoo. We made it to the end of another successful live. Holy crap. We've been here almost 4 hours. Don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already. Happy Wednesday night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. Loophole Lawyer and I will be back on Monday. And I think we do finally have the phone call thing up and running. It's taken us a lot longer than we thought. We had all these issues with like feedback and, echoes, and it was nuts. So, but I think we're finally there. So hopefully by Monday, we will have it completely up and running. You guys are the very best. Denise, thank you for being the world's greatest moderator. So patient, so kind, so wonderful. You guys, I cannot thank you enough for your support. Let's get to 60,000 subs. Holy crap, that's crazy. And don't forget, tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, me and Emily C. Everybody, have a great night.
It is the defense counselor's duty to protect the rights of the individual, as it is the prosecution's duty to uphold and defend the laws of the state. Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright.
This is me reminding you to like this video. Like the video. I promise if you get up right now and you like this video, I will never sing again. Comment, subscribe,